I stood there in the blinding Colorado sun, squinting at the empty spot where our car had been just 10 minutes ago. My wife, Chloe, and her friends, Isla, Stephanie, and Lauren, had vanished. At first, I thought it was one of their stupid pranks. They were always doing stuff like this, pushing boundaries, testing how much I'd take before I snapped. 5 years of marriage, and I'd gotten used to their little games, the way they'd laugh at me, the way Chloe would join in instead of standing up for me. But this felt different. My phone was still plugged into the car charger, my wallet tucked in the glove box. All I had was the faded t-shirt and jeans I was wearing, and a growing pit in my stomach as the minutes ticked by. We'd been on this road trip to Stephanie's lake house for 3 days now, and I'd been miserable the whole time. Chloe had begged me to come, said it'd be a chance to bond with her crew. I wasn't big on the idea. Her friends always treated me like an outsider, tossing out jabs and inside jokes I wasn't part of, but I went anyway, because I loved her. Or at least, I thought I did. The gas station was in the middle of nowhere, just a dusty little stop off the highway with a flickering sign and a single pump. I'd gone inside to use the bathroom, figuring they'd wait. They always waited. Except this time, they didn't. An hour passed. I paced the cracked pavement, kicking pebbles, telling myself they'd come back any second, tires crunching gravel, Chloe's voice calling out, "Gotcha." But the road stayed quiet. 2 hours in, sweat was dripping down my neck, and my throat was dry. I kept replaying the last few days in my head. The way Stephanie smirked when she accidentally spilled coffee on my lap. How Lauren whispered something to Chloe that made her giggle while glancing at me. How Isla just watched it all with that smug little grin. I should have seen it coming. They'd been building up to something, and I'd been too dumb to notice. A truck pulled up, its engine rumbling loud enough to shake me out of my thoughts. The driver, a big guy with a gray beard and a stained ball cap, leaned out the window. "You okay, buddy?" Been standing there a while. His voice was rough but kind, and it hit me like a punch. I wasn't okay. They weren't coming back. Chloe wasn't coming back. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Yeah, my ride left me. You think you could help?" He nodded, like it wasn't the first time he'd seen someone stranded out here. "Hop in. Where you headed?" I didn't even know. Home. Back to Chloe. The life we'd built. But as I climbed into the cab, something shifted inside me. 5 years of her laughing at me, brushing me off, letting her friends treat me like garbage. It all came rushing up, hot and heavy. I stared out the window as the gas station shrank in the side mirror. The trucker didn't ask too many questions, just kept driving, humming some old country song. My hands clenched into fists on my lap. I could have borrowed his phone, called Chloe, demanded answers. But what would she say? "It was a joke, babe. Don't be so sensitive." I'd heard it all before. Every time I complained about her friends, she'd roll her eyes and tell me I didn't get their humor. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I never would. But standing there alone, abandoned like some stray dog, I realized something. They didn't get me either. And Chloe? She'd picked them over me, again and again. The trucker dropped me off at a crossroad, pointing me toward Grand Junction, the nearest town. "Good luck, man," he said, tipping his cap. I nodded, my throat tight, and started walking. My shoes scuffed the dirt, the sun beating down on my head. No phone, no money, no plan, just me and the open road. Part of me wanted to turn back, to beg someone at the gas station to call her, to fix this. But another part, a louder part, kept pushing me forward. I was done being the punchline, done being the guy they laughed at. Chloe and her friends thought they'd won, thought they'd broken me. But as I trudged toward Grand Junction, a strange calm settled over me. They hadn't broken me. They'd set me free. I didn't know what was waiting for me in that town. I didn't know how I'd eat, where I'd sleep, or how I'd get by with nothing. But for the first time in years, I wasn't scared of what Chloe would think. I wasn't worried about her friend's next move. I was alone, yeah, but I wasn't helpless. The road stretched out ahead, endless and empty, and I kept walking. They'd left me behind, but maybe that was the best thing they could have done. Maybe this was my chance to figure out who I was without her, without them. By the time the sun started dipping low, turning the sky orange, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going back. Not to Chloe, not to that life. Whatever came next, it was mine to build. I stood at that dusty crossroad where the trucker dropped me off, the Colorado wind kicking up little swirls of dirt around my feet. Grand Junction was somewhere ahead, but I didn't have a map, a phone, or a dime to my name. Just the clothes on my back and a head full of spinning thoughts. Chloe and her friends had left me high and dry, and part of me still wanted to find a way to call her, to hear her voice, to demand she turn the car around. But then I remembered how she'd laughed when Stephanie accidentally knocked my beer over at the lake house, how she'd shrugged when I asked her to stick up for me. 5 years of that. 5 years of feeling like a guest in my own marriage. No, I wasn't calling her. Not this time. I started walking toward town, my sneakers crunching on the gravel. The sun was still high, baking the ground, and sweat soaked through my shirt. I didn't know how far Grand Junction was. Miles, probably, but I didn't care. Every step felt like a choice, like I was leaving her behind one footprint at a time. My mind kept drifting back to the gas station, to the moment I stepped out of that grimy bathroom and saw nothing but empty pavement. They'd planned it, hadn't they? Chloe, Stephanie, Isla, Lauren, all giggling in the car as they peeled out, thinking it'd be hilarious to ditch me. I could almost hear Chloe saying, "He'll figure it out, he always does." Well, I was figuring it out now, just not the way she expected. A pickup truck rumbled by, and I stuck out my thumb, hoping for a lift. The driver, a guy with a scruffy beard and a faded flannel shirt, slowed down and leaned out the window. "Need a ride?" he asked, eyeing me like he wasn't sure if I was trouble. "Yeah, heading to Grand Junction," I said, keeping my voice steady. He nodded. "Hop in. I'm going that way." I climbed into the passenger seat, grateful for the break. The cab smelled like oil and cigarettes, but it beat walking. "What's your story?" he asked as we rolled down the highway. I hesitated, then shrugged. "Got left behind by some people I thought I could trust." He grunted, like he'd heard that one before. "Happens more than you'd think out here." He dropped me off on the edge of Grand Junction, near a cluster of low buildings and a blinking traffic light. "Take care, man," he said, and drove off. I stood there, taking it in. A small town with a mix of old brick storefronts and newer chain stores. People going about their day like nothing was wrong. But everything was wrong for me. No wallet, no ID, no way to prove who I was. I needed help, and fast. I spotted a sign for a homeless shelter a few blocks down, a plain building with a cross painted on the side. My stomach twisted at the thought. Me in a shelter? But what choice did I have? Inside, it was dim and smelled like bleach and stale coffee. A guy behind the counter looked up. Roy, his name tag said. He was older, maybe 50, with a shaved head and a no-nonsense stare. "You lost or just broke?" he asked, sizing me up. "Both," I admitted, rubbing the back of my neck. "Got ditched out on the highway. No money, no phone, nothing." Roy didn't blink. "Happens. You got a name?" "Yeah. Mike," I said, figuring it was easier to stick to the truth for now. He handed me a clipboard with a form. "Fill this out. We'll get you a bed for the night. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." That night, I lay on a cot in a room full of snoring strangers, staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't shut off. Chloe's face kept popping up, her voice, her laugh. I wanted to hate her, but part of me still ached for her to show up, to say it was all a mistake. But Roy's words stuck with me. "Tomorrow, we'll figure out the rest." He didn't mess around. The next morning, he sat me down with a cup of weak coffee and a plan. "You need ID to do anything. Job, bank, whatever. Takes time, but we'll start the process. Meantime, you need cash." I nodded, feeling useless. "Know anywhere hiring?" I asked. Roy smirked. "There's a diner down the street. Owner's a tough old broad named Jacqueline. Tell her I sent you." The diner was a squat little place called Jackie's, with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. Jacqueline was behind the counter, a wiry woman in her 60s with tattoos snaking up her arms and a voice like gravel. "Roy says you need work," she said, not even looking up from wiping the counter. "Yeah, I do," I replied, shifting on my feet. "Anything you got." She squinted at me, like she was trying to see through me. "Dishwasher quit yesterday. Pays crap. Hours are long. You steal from me, you're dead. Start now." I blinked, caught off guard, but nodded. "Okay, I'm in." She tossed me an apron, and just like that, I was scrubbing plates in the back, hot water soaking my hands. It wasn't much, but it was something mine. No Chloe, no friends laughing at me, just me and a stack of greasy dishes. Roy checked in later that week, helped me file for a replacement ID. "You're doing all right, Mike," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. I wasn't so sure, but I kept going. The shelter became my home, Jacqueline's diner my lifeline. I didn't call Chloe. Didn't even try. Every night, I fell asleep exhausted, but it was a good kind of tired. I was starting over, from nothing, and it felt like maybe, just maybe, I could make it work. I woke up on that cot in the shelter every morning with the same ache in my back, the same buzz of snores and coughs from the other guys around me. It had been a couple of weeks since Chloe and her friends ditched me at that gas station, and I was still getting used to this new life. Scrubbing dishes at Jacqueline's diner, sleeping on a borrowed bed, wearing clothes from a donation bin. My hands were raw from the hot water and soap, but I didn't mind. It kept me busy, kept my mind off her. Roy had been a rock, helping me navigate the mess of getting a replacement ID. Takes time, he'd said, handing me a stack of forms. But you'll get there. I nodded, grateful for his gruff kindness, and kept pushing forward. The diner was my world now. Jacqueline didn't mess around. She'd bark orders from the counter, her sharp eyes catching every mistake. Move faster, Mike, we ain't got all day, she'd yell, but there was no real venom in it. I worked double shifts whenever I could, piling up cash in a little envelope I stashed under my cot. My first paycheck wasn't much, but it was enough to buy a cheap prepaid phone from the gas station down the street. I held it in my hands, the plastic still shiny, and felt a rush of something like pride. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, bought with my own money, not Chloe's, not anyone else's. I didn't need her anymore. Then the call started. I'd only had the phone a day when it buzzed in my pocket while I was elbow deep in suds. I wiped my hands on my apron and pulled it out. Chloe's number flashed on the screen. My stomach dropped. I let it ring, watching it like it might bite me, until it went to voicemail. A minute later, the notification popped up. I shouldn't have listened, but I did. Her voice came through, soft and shaky, like she'd been practicing what to say. Mike, where are you? We waited for you. It was just a joke. We're so worried. Please call me back. I stood there, staring at the sink, the water still running. Worried? They'd left me in the middle of nowhere with nothing. If they'd waited, they'd have come back by now. The phone buzzed again, Stephanie this time. I hit play on her voicemail, and her tone was totally different, all smug and casual. Come on, dude. You have to admit, it was hilarious. Call us back, all right. Hilarious. I clenched the phone so hard my knuckles went white. That's what I was to them. A punchline. A story to laugh about over drinks at the lake house. More calls came after that. A flood of them. Chloe again. Then Lauren. Then Stephanie, piling up with texts and voicemails. We miss you. Where'd you go? This isn't funny anymore. I scrolled through them all, my chest tight, my head spinning. Chloe's words kept echoing. Fake concern, fake tears. She didn't care. None of them did. I sat on my cot that night, the shelter quiet except for the creak of springs and the hum of the heater. The phone glowed in my hand, their messages lighting up the screen. I listened to Chloe's first one again, then Stephanie's, then one from Lauren that was just her giggling before it cut off. My thumb hovered over the call button. Part of me wanted to dial Chloe, to scream at her, to ask why she'd done this. But what would it change? She'd just laugh it off, or cry and make me feel guilty, like she always did. I'd spent years swallowing their crap, smiling through it because I thought that's what a good husband did. Not anymore. I went through the list. Chloe, Stephanie, Isla, Lauren, and blocked every single one. My fingers shook a little as I did it, but once it was done, the phone went silent. No more buzzing, no more lies. I leaned back against the wall, letting out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. It felt like cutting a rope I'd been tangled in for years. They couldn't reach me now. They didn't get to decide how this ended. I did. The next day, I went back to the diner like nothing had happened, plunging my hands into the dishwater, letting the heat burn away the last of their voices in my head. Jacqueline noticed something was off, though. You're quiet today, she said, tossing me a rag to wipe down the counter. Trouble. I shrugged, not wanting to get into it. Just sorting some stuff out. She snorted. Long as it don't mess with my kitchen, sort of way. I smirked at that. She didn't care about my drama, just the job. It was refreshing. Roy checked in later, handing me a paper with a case number for my ID. Coming along, he said. You holding up? I nodded. Yeah, better than I thought. He clapped me on the shoulder and left me to it. By the end of the week, I'd saved enough to buy a second-hand jacket from the shelter's donation pile. Nothing fancy, but it kept the chill off. I walked back to my cot each night, The prepaid phone silent in my pocket and felt lighter. Chloe and her friends were gone, cut out like a bad habit. I didn't need their apologies or their excuses. I had work, a bed, a plan, small things, but they were mine. The ache was still there, sure, the sting of betrayal, but it was fading. Every dish I scrubbed, every dollar I tucked away, I was building something new, something they couldn't touch. And for the first time in a long time, I fell asleep without dreaming of her. I'd been at the diner for months now, and things were starting to feel steady. Not perfect, but steady. The shelter was still my home, but I'd saved enough to move into a tiny studio above a laundromat in Grand Junction. It wasn't much, just a single room with a lumpy mattress, a hot plate, and a bathroom so small I could barely turn around in it. But it was mine. No more cots, no more snoring strangers, just a key in my pocket and a door I could lock. Jacqueline had seen me busting my tail at the diner and bumped me up to prep cook, which meant more hours and a little more cash. I'd chop onions and peel potatoes in the back, the rhythm of the knife keeping my hands busy and my mind quiet. It was hard work, but it felt good, like I was earning something real. The nights were still tough, though. I'd lie on that creaky mattress, staring at the water stains on the ceiling, and Chloe would creep into my head. I'd see her smile, hear her laugh. Not the mean one she used with her friends, but the soft one she'd give me back when things were good, back before I became her punching bag. I'd wonder what she was doing, if she missed me, if she even cared. The loneliness hit hard sometimes, a cold weight in my chest that wouldn't go away. But then morning would come, and I'd drag myself out of bed, pull on my jacket, and head to the diner. No fear of her judgment, no cruel jabs from her friends. Just me, free to breathe, free to be. One night, after a long shift, I was messing around with my prepaid phone, bored and restless. I kept it simple, no contacts, no ties to the past, but curiosity got the better of me. I made a fake social media account, just a random name and no picture, and looked her up. Chloe's profile popped up, still public, still full of her perfect little life. There were pictures from the lake house trip, her and Stephanie posing by the water, Isla grinning with a drink in her hand. Then I saw it, a post about me. It was a photo of us from years ago, smiling at some picnic, and her caption hit me like a slap. Missing my love. I pray he finds his way back to me. I stared at it, my thumb frozen on the screen. Missing me? She hadn't even gone back for me. She'd driven off and left me to rot. I almost laughed, right there in that dingy apartment, the sound bouncing off the bare walls. It was so fake, so Chloe, turning herself into the victim, like I'd wandered off on my own instead of being abandoned. I scrolled through the comments, Stephanie saying, "He'll turn up, don't worry." Lauren chiming in with, "Sending you hugs." And my stomach turned. They were all in on it, playing this game like I was the bad guy. I clicked off the phone and tossed it onto the mattress, running my hands through my hair. She hadn't changed. None of them had. But I had. I wasn't the guy in that picnic photo anymore, the one who'd grin and take it while they tore me down. I was someone else now, someone they didn't know. The next day at the diner, I was quieter than usual, still chewing on what I'd seen. Jacqueline noticed, of course, she always did. "You look like someone kicked your dog," she said, sliding a plate of fries my way during a slow moment. I shrugged, picking at the food. "Just thinking too much." She raised an eyebrow, her tattooed arms crossed. "About what? That ex of yours?" I froze, surprised she'd guessed it. I'd never told her the whole story, just bits and pieces. "Yeah," I admitted. "Saw something online. She's acting like she's the one who got hurt." Jacqueline snorted, loud and sharp. "Sounds like a real piece of work. Good riddance, kid." I nodded, managing a small smile. She was right. Good riddance. Work kept me grounded. I'd dice vegetables, flip burgers when the cook needed a hand, wipe down counters, anything to keep moving. The diner had its regulars, folks who'd nod at me or leave a couple bucks on the table, and that felt good, like I was part of something. My hands were calloused now, my arms stronger from hauling crates and scrubbing pans. I'd catch my reflection in the diner's glass doors sometimes, tired eyes, messy hair, but a guy who was making it, one day at a time. Chloe's post faded from my mind, replaced by the clatter of plates and Jacqueline's gruff voice calling out orders. I stopped checking her social media after that. Didn't need to. Whatever she was saying, whatever story she was spinning, it didn't matter. I had my studio, my job, my life, Small, sure, but growing. The loneliness still came around, especially on quiet nights when the laundromat downstairs hummed and rattled, but it wasn't as sharp anymore. I'd wake up to the smell of detergent drifting through the floorboards, pull on my boots, and head out into the cold morning air. No one was waiting to mock me. No one was rolling their eyes at my every word. I could just be Mike, plain, simple Mike, and that was enough. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on solid ground, not sinking in quicksand. Freedom wasn't loud or flashy. It was this, my key, my paycheck, my choice. And I wasn't giving it back. I'd been living above the laundromat for a while now, settling into a routine that felt like mine. Work at the diner, save my cash, sleep in my own space. The days blended together, but they were good days, steady ones. Then she walked in, Sienna. She started coming to Jacqueline's diner twice a week, always in the same booth by the window, always with a stack of textbooks and a pen in her hand. She was a med student, I figured, from the way she'd mutter medical terms under her breath while scribbling notes. Her order never changed: Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee, and she'd barely look up when I brought it over. I'd watch her sometimes, amused at how she'd get so lost in her studying that her fork would hover halfway to her mouth for a full minute before she noticed. I don't know why I started messing with her. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I just wanted to see if she'd crack a smile. I'd swap out my name tag with random names I'd make up, Bob one day, Steve the next, Carl after that, just to see if she'd catch it. She didn't at first, too buried in her books, but one morning, I walked over with Rusty pinned to my shirt, and she finally looked up. Her eyes narrowed, flicking to the tag, then back to my face. "Your name tag is wrong," she said, her voice quiet but firm, like she was diagnosing me. I grinned, caught off guard. "Is it?" I shot back, even though it was. My real name was Mike, and she'd never asked. She smirked, just a little, and went back to her notes. That was it, our first real moment, and it stuck with me. Work kept me busy, but Sienna became the highlight of my week. She'd show up, order her usual, and I'd find excuses to swing by her table, refill her coffee, clear her plate, ask if she needed anything. She'd nod or mumble a thanks, but that smirk stayed in my head, like a challenge. One day, she came in looking frazzled, her hair messy, her books heavier than usual. "Rough night?" I asked, setting her coffee down. She sighed, rubbing her eyes. "Exams. I haven't slept in 2 days." I nodded, not pushing it, but I slipped an extra hash brown onto her plate when she wasn't looking. She noticed, glanced up at me, and said, "You're sneaky." I just shrugged. "Gotta keep you awake somehow." Our first date wasn't even planned. She came in one evening, all dressed up, jeans and a nice top, not her usual sweatshirt, and told me her friends had bailed on a reservation at some fancy pizza place across town. "I'm not wasting it," she said, half to herself, then looked at me. "You free?" I was wiping down the counter, my shift almost over, and Jacqueline was in earshot. "Go on, kid," she barked, waving me off. "You're no use to me moping around." So I went. We split a pepperoni pizza and a pitcher of soda, and she laughed, really laughed, when I told her about the name tag thing. "I knew it wasn't Rusty," she said, her eyes bright. "You're not that old." We talked all night, about her med school stress, my diner gig, dumb stuff like favorite movies. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other forever. 6 months later, she moved into my little studio. It was cramped. Her books took up half the space, and we'd trip over each other making dinner on that tiny hot plate, but I didn't care. She'd study late, her lamp glowing while I slept, and I'd wake up to her muttering anatomy terms in her sleep. It was weirdly comforting. A year after that, we got a bigger place together, a real apartment with a kitchen and a couch that didn't smell like bleach. Sienna was different from Chloe. She didn't mock me, didn't make me feel small. When I'd doubt myself, she'd just say, "You've got this." And somehow, I'd believe her. We'd cook together, watch old TV shows, argue over who left the dishes in the sink. It was simple, but it was ours. Meanwhile, Chloe wouldn't let go. She'd started emailing me, found my address somehow, probably from an old bill or something. The first one came a few weeks after Sienna moved in, popping up on my phone while I was chopping peppers at the diner. "Mike, I just want to know you're okay," it read. "I miss you." "We all do." I stared at it, my knife hovering over the cutting board. "Miss me?" She'd left me at a gas station with nothing, laughed about it with her friends, and now she missed me? I deleted it without replying. More came after that, some short, some long, all dripping with that fake sweetness she'd mastered. I messed up, I know. Please talk to me. I saw your grandma. She's worried. I'd read them, feel that old ache in my chest, then hit delete. Sienna caught me once, frowning at my phone. Who's that? She asked. Nobody, I said, and she didn't push. She didn't need to. I wasn't going back. Life with Sienna was good, better than I'd thought I deserved. The diner was humming, my hands were steady, and Chloe's emails were just noise I could tune out. I'd built something new, something solid, and every day with Sienna proved it. She'd tease me about my cooking, I'd laugh at her terrible singing, and we'd fall asleep tangled up on that secondhand couch. Chloe could write all she wanted. I didn't know her a damn thing. My world was here now, with Sienna, and I wasn't letting go. I stood in the kitchen of Jacqueline's diner, flipping a burger on the grill, the sizzle filling the air as grease popped against my apron. Things had been good. Better than good, really. Sienna and I were settled in our new apartment, a step up from the cramped studio above the laundromat. It had a real bedroom, a stove that didn't smoke, and a window that let in actual sunlight. Life felt solid, like I'd finally climbed out of the hole Chloe and her friends had left me in. Work was steady too. I'd been at the diner long enough that Jacqueline trusted me with more than just dishes and prep. She'd started leaning on me, barking less and nodding more when I got things done right. That day, though, she called me over to the counter during a slow stretch, her sharp eyes locked on me like she had something big to say. Mike, she said, wiping her hands on a rag, you're not half bad at this. I smirked, thinking she was joking, but her face stayed serious. I'm opening a second spot across town, smaller joint, but mine. Need someone to run it. You in? I froze, spatula in hand, the burger sizzling behind me. Me? Run a diner? I'd gone from scrubbing plates to cooking, sure, but managing a whole place? You serious? I asked, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. She snorted. Do I look like I'm kidding? You've got the chops. Work hard, don't steal, don't whine. Say yes or no. My head spun. A year ago, I'd been dumped at a gas station with nothing. Now I was getting offered this. I almost said no, convinced it was some trick, like Chloe's pranks all over again. That night, I sat on our couch, Sienna's and mine, staring at the TV without really watching it. She came home from a late study session, dropping her bag by the door, and saw me just sitting there. What's up? She asked, kicking off her shoes. I told her about Jacqueline's offer, my voice low, like saying it out loud might jinx it. She wants me to run her new diner. Me in charge. Sienna plopped down next to me, her knee brushing mine. And you're thinking about turning it down? She said, reading me like always. I shrugged, rubbing my neck. I don't know. What if I screw it up? She grabbed my hand, her grip firm. You're already running that place half the time, helping with orders, fixing stuff when she's yelling at someone else. Just make it official. You've got this. Her words hit me hard, like a shove I didn't know I needed. She didn't doubt me, not for a second, and that felt new, strange, good. Chloe would have laughed, said something like, you? A boss? And her friends would have piled on. But Sienna just looked at me, steady and sure, and I nodded. Okay, I'll do it. She smiled, that small one I loved, and leaned her head on my shoulder. Good. Now stop moping. We've got dishes to do. I laughed, the weight lifting a little, and we washed plates together, her humming some off-key song while I splashed water at her. The next day, I told Jacqueline yes. She grunted, like she'd expected it, and handed me a set of keys. Don't burn it down, she said, then went back to counting cash. The new diner was a hole-in-the-wall spot. 10 tables, a counter, a kitchen barely big enough for two, but it was mine to run. I started the next week, setting up schedules, ordering supplies, cooking when the line got slammed. It was chaos at first, waitresses forgetting orders, me burning a batch of fries, but I figured it out. Sienna was right. I'd been doing this stuff already, just without the title. The place started humming, regulars trickling in, and Jacqueline even stopped by once, nodding like she approved. Not bad, kid, she said, and I felt taller than I had in years. Then Chloe's email came. I was at the new diner, checking inventory on my phone, when it popped up. Mike, your grandmother's been asking about you. Please let us know you're alive. My gut twisted. Grandma. She'd always been sweet, sending me cards even after I married Chloe. But Chloe bringing her up now? It was a cheap shot, a hook to reel me back in. I pictured her typing it, fake tears in her eyes, trying to guilt me like always. I deleted it, my thumb slamming the screen harder than it needed to. She didn't get to use grandma against me, not after what she'd done. I hadn't called home in a while, sure, but I'd fixed that myself, not through her. I threw myself into the diner after that, keeping my hands busy so my mind wouldn't wander. The place was picking up, truckers stopping by, locals chatting me up like I was one of them. I'd come home to Sienna studying at our table, her books spread out, and she'd ask how it went. Good, I'd say and mean it. We'd cook dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta or burgers, and talk about her classes, my day, the future. Chloe's emails kept coming, piling up in my trash folder, but I didn't open them. She was a ghost, a shadow I could ignore. My life was here. The diner, Sienna, the keys in my pocket. I'd been abandoned once, left to figure it out, and I had. Now I was building something better, something they couldn't touch. Every night, I locked up the diner, drove home to Sienna, and felt like a man who'd finally found his footing. I was flipping eggs in the kitchen of my third diner, the one on the edge of town, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. The morning rush was in full swing, truckers hollering for coffee, waitresses darting between tables, and I almost ignored it. 15 years had turned me into a different man. Sienna and I were married, 2 kids tearing up our house, 3 diner locations keeping me busy. Life was good, loud, full. Nothing like the empty shell I'd been when Chloe left me at that gas station. I wiped my hands on my apron, pulled out my phone, and saw it. A LinkedIn notification. Someone viewed your profile 27 times today. My stomach did a little flip. I didn't use LinkedIn much, just a basic page with my name, the diners, a blurry photo Sienna made me take. But 27 times? That wasn't normal. I tapped it open, the grill hissing behind me, and there she was, Chloe. Her name hit me like a cold splash of water, right there on the screen, tied to some company I didn't care about. 27 views in one day. She'd been digging through my life, over and over. I set the phone down, my hands gripping the counter, trying to steady myself. 15 years, and she was back, creeping in like a shadow I thought I'd shaken off. I flipped the eggs, barely watching, my mind racing. What did she want? Why now? I'd blocked her emails years ago, ignored her guilt trips, built a whole world without her. But here she was, poking around, silent but loud in my head. The diner smelled like bacon and syrup, the clatter of plates keeping me grounded. I plated the eggs, handed them off to a waitress, and tried to focus. Coffee needed refilling, hash browns were burning, but Chloe's name stuck with me. I pictured her sitting somewhere, clicking my profile, seeing the diners, maybe even the old job at Jacqueline's I'd listed. Did she know about Sienna? The kids? I hadn't posted much, just enough to look legit, but 27 views meant she was looking hard. I wiped my forehead, sweat mixing with the heat, and grabbed my phone again. Her profile stared back. Chloe, older now, hair cut short, a tight smile in her picture. Consultant, it said. I didn't read more. Didn't want to. I stepped into the back, a tiny storeroom with shelves of flour and canned goods, and leaned against the wall. My heart was thumping too fast, like I'd run a mile. 15 years, 2 kids, a wife, a business, and she could still rattle me. I hated that. I'd worked so hard to bury her, to forget the gas station, the laughter, the way she'd made me feel like nothing. Now she was back, not even saying anything, just watching. Was she jealous? Mad? Desperate? I ran my hands through my hair, pacing the cramped space. Part of me wanted to message her, "What's your deal?" But I stopped myself. That's what she'd want. Me reaching out, giving her a crack to slip through. I went back to the grill, threw myself into the rush, cooking, pouring, wiping down tables when the waitresses got swamped. The regulars nodded at me. Some guy asked for extra ketchup, and I kept moving, kept my hands busy. But she was there, in the back of my mind, those 27 views like an itch I couldn't scratch. I didn't tell Sienna when I got home that night. She was on the couch, folding laundry, the kids upstairs yelling about some game. Busy day? She asked, glancing up. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile, kissing her forehead. Same old. She didn't push, just handed me a pile of socks to sort, and I sat there, folding, pretending everything was fine. The house was warm, Smelled like dinner. Chicken and rice, Sienna's go-to, and the kids tumbled down, begging for dessert. I laughed, said no, felt normal for a minute. But Chloe lingered, a ghost I couldn't shake. I didn't check LinkedIn again, didn't need to see if she'd looked more. 27 was enough. I helped Sienna with the dishes, her hip bumping mine, and tried to let it go. My life was here, 2 kids fighting over the last cookie, a wife who didn't laugh at me, diners I'd built from nothing. Chloe couldn't touch that, not really. Still, I went to bed with her name in my head, staring at the ceiling while Sienna slept beside me. The next day, I was at the first diner, pouring coffee, when my phone buzzed again. I didn't look, just shoved it deeper in my pocket. If it was her, I didn't want to know. I'd spent years locking her out, and now she was knocking, quiet but steady. I focused on the work, grill, counter, cash register, kept my hands moving, my voice steady. She was out there, somewhere, but I was here, standing tall. Whatever she wanted, whatever game she was playing, I wasn't biting. Not yet. Not ever, if I could help it. I was wiping down the counter at the original diner, the one Jacqueline first hired me for, when the door jingled and they walked in, Chloe, Stephanie, and Isla. It was 3 days after those LinkedIn alerts, and I'd been on edge, half expecting something like this. The breakfast rush had just died down, leaving a handful of regulars sipping coffee, the air thick with grease and burnt toast. I saw them before they saw me, Chloe's short hair catching the light, Stephanie's swagger still there, Isla hunched like she wanted to disappear. My gut twisted, hands freezing on the rag. 15 years since they ditched me at that gas station, and now they were here, in my diner, my turf. I didn't move, just watched them pick a booth by the window and sit, their voices low but familiar. I could have stayed back, let the waitress handle it, but something pulled me out there. Maybe anger, maybe just needing to see it through. I grabbed a pot of coffee, more for something to hold than anything else, and walked over. Chloe spotted me first, her eyes going wide, her mouth dropping open. "Oh my God, it's you," she said, her voice shaky, like she hadn't rehearsed it. Stephanie leaned back, smirking like always. "Hey, look at you, big shot." Isla glanced up, then down fast, her hands fidgeting with the menu. I stood there, coffee pot in hand, looking at them. Older, worn, desperate in a way I didn't expect. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping it short, my voice harder than I felt. Chloe shifted, leaning forward, her fingers twisting together. "Mike, can we talk? Please." I didn't sit, didn't soften. "I'm working. Talk." She swallowed, glancing at Stephanie for backup, then started. We need your help." It spilled out. Her life had crashed. Her artsy little business went under. Her marriage, some guy I didn't know, fell apart, and she was broke, begging now. Stephanie jumped in, casual like it was no big deal. "You're doing all right? 3 diners? We just need a hand, for old times." Isla nodded, barely audible. "Just a little help." I listened, letting it sink in. Chloe's sob story, Stephanie's charm, Isla's guilt. They'd planned this, tracked me down, thought I'd roll over. I stood there, coffee pot still hot in my grip, watching them squirm. Chloe's eyes got wet, Stephanie's smirk twitched, Isla shredded the edge of her menu. I remembered her LinkedIn stalking, 27 views, then showing up here, thinking I'd cave because I used to. "Wait here," I said, turning away. I walked to the office, a cramped box with a desk and a stack of receipts, my boots heavy on the floor. They wanted money. After leaving me with nothing, laughing about it, they thought I'd just hand it over. I sat down, the chair creaking, and stared at the wall. My hands shook a little, not from fear, from anger. I could have yelled, thrown them out, but I didn't. I grabbed an envelope, wrote a check, and headed back. They were still there, whispering, heads snapping up when I walked over. I dropped the envelope in front of Chloe, watching her fingers snatch it up, her face lighting up for a second. She opened it. $73.50, the exact cost of a Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction back home, 15 years ago. Her smile crashed, her breath catching. Stephanie grabbed it, glaring. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. I leaned in, my voice low, steady. "That's what it would have cost me to get back to you that day. I didn't. You don't get more than that." Chloe's mouth opened, no sound coming out. Stephanie shoved the check at me. "You're a jerk, Mike. After everything." I cut her off. "After everything? You left me. You laughed. This is me being generous." Isla flinched, her hands balling up, but she didn't speak. I straightened, looking at them. Chloe pale, Stephanie fuming, Isla shrinking. "It's time to leave," I said, loud enough for the diner to hear. "Don't come back." I turned, walked to the counter, my heart pounding but my steps sure. The waitress hovered, unsure, but I waved her off. "They're done," I said, grabbing a rag to wipe my hands. They sat there a minute, stunned, then scrambled up, Chloe shoving the envelope in her purse, Stephanie muttering, Isla trailing behind. The door jingled shut, and the diner went back to normal, coffee pouring, forks clinking, like they'd never been there. I stood behind the counter, pouring myself a cup, my hands steady now. They'd come begging, thinking I'd bend, and I'd shut them down. It wasn't loud or messy, just cold, final. I sipped the coffee, bitter on my tongue, and watched the regulars chat, oblivious. Chloe's tears, Stephanie's anger, they didn't matter. I'd given them what they'd given me, just enough to walk away. The diner hummed around me, my diner, my life, and they were gone. I finished my shift, locked up, and drove home, the weight lifting with every mile. They'd tried, and they'd lost. That was it. I leaned against the diner's front window, the glass cold against my arm, watching Chloe, Stephanie, and Isla out in the parking lot. They'd just stormed out after I handed them that $73.50 check. Bus fare from Grand Junction, nothing more. And now they were at it, arguing like kids caught stealing. Stephanie was loud, her hands slashing the air, her face twisted up like she wanted to hit something. Chloe stood there, the envelope crumpled in her fist, staring at the ground, her shoulders hunched. Isla hung back, her arms crossed tight, looking like she might bolt or cry. Maybe both. I couldn't hear them through the window, but I didn't need to. They'd come in begging, thinking I'd cave, and I'd sent them packing. Now they were unraveling, and I just watched, feeling nothing. The sun was low, painting the lot orange, their shadows stretching long across the gravel. Stephanie jabbed a finger at Chloe, her mouth moving fast, probably blaming her for dragging them here, for screwing it up. Chloe shook her head, slow and tired, then shoved the check into her purse like it was trash. Isla shifted, glancing at the diner, her eyes catching mine for a second before darting away. I didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there, my coffee mug cooling on the counter behind me. They could fight all day out there. It didn't touch me. I'd given them what they deserved, closed the book on 15 years of their garbage, and that was that. I turned away, grabbing the mug and taking a sip. Cold now, bitter, but I didn't care. The diner was quiet, just a couple of regulars lingering over pie, the jukebox humming some old tune. I wiped down the counter, slow and steady, letting the rag soak up the day. The waitresses buzzed around, clearing tables, shooting me quick looks but keeping their mouths shut. They knew something had happened. Those three walking in, me walking out with that envelope, but I didn't explain. "You good, Mike?" one asked, stacking plates. "Yeah," I said, short and sharp, and went back to wiping. I didn't want their questions, didn't want to drag it out. Chloe and her crew were gone, and I was done. Driving home, the truck's engine growled under me, the road dark except for my headlights cutting through. My hands gripped the wheel, my mind stuck on that scene. Chloe's face when she saw the check, Stephanie's snarl, Isla's silence. It should have felt good, shutting them down, and it did, mostly. But there was this itch, a little nag I couldn't shake. They'd looked desperate, broken, Chloe especially, with her sob story about her life falling apart. 15 years ago, I'd have cared, run after them, tried to fix it. Now, I just watched them leave. The house came into view, lights on, Sienna's car in the drive, and I let out a breath. This was real, my family, my life, not them. I walked in, kicking my boots off by the door, the smell of leftover lasagna hitting me. Sienna was at the kitchen table, papers spread out, a pen in her hand, grading again, probably. The kids were upstairs, their voices muffled, likely in bed, but not asleep. She looked up, her glasses low on her nose. "Hey," she said, soft, then tilted her head. "You okay?" I nodded, pulling out a chair and sitting across from her, my hands flat on the table. "They came by," I said, keeping it simple. Her eyebrows lifted, but she waited. Chloe, Stephanie, Isla asked for money. I gave them bus fare and told them to go. She set her pen down, leaning back, her eyes steady on mine. "Bus fare?" she asked, a little smile tugging her lips. I told her, $73.50, the exact cost to get back from Grand Junction all those years ago. How Chloe's face fell, how Stephanie snapped, how I walked away. Sienna listened, her hand resting on the table, calm like always. When I finished, she reached over, her fingers brushing mine. They can't take anything from you that you don't give them, she said, her voice firm, quiet. I looked at her, those words sinking in, and nodded. Yeah, I said, my throat tight. She squeezed my hand, then went back to her papers, leaving me sitting there, the weight lifting a little. She didn't need to say more. She got it, got me, and that was enough. We ate leftovers later, just the two of us, the kids finally quiet upstairs. I poked at the lasagna, my head still half in the parking lot, Stephanie yelling, Chloe staring, Isla shrinking. It didn't matter what they said out there, who they blamed. They'd come for a handout, and I'd given them a mirror instead. Sienna didn't ask more, just talked about the kids, our son's math test, our daughter's new obsession with drawing cats. I smiled, nodded, let her pull me back to now. After, we cleaned up, her hip bumping mine at the sink, and I felt steady again. That night, lying in bed, Sienna's breathing slow beside me. I stared at the ceiling. The house creaked, the kids shifting in their rooms, and I replayed it. Those three in my diner, then out in the lot, falling apart. They couldn't touch this, my family, my diners, me. I'd shut the door, locked it tight, and they were on the other side, where they belonged. The itch was still there, faint, but fading. Sienna was right. They got nothing I didn't give, and I'd given them the end. I closed my eyes, the days slipping away, and slept hard, done with their ghosts for good. I stood in the kitchen of our house, stirring a pot of chili on the stove, the smell of spices filling the air. It had been weeks since Chloe, Stephanie, and Isla walked into my diner, since I handed them that $73.50 check and watched them argue in the parking lot. I hadn't seen them since, not a call, not an email, not even a whisper on LinkedIn. They were gone, really gone this time, and I felt it, a quiet that settled deep, like a storm finally passing. Life rolled on. Sienna grading papers at the table, the kids chasing each other around the backyard, the diners humming with regulars. It was mine, all of it, and they couldn't touch it. I'd stopped looking over my shoulder, stopped waiting for the next knock. The chili bubbled, steam rising, and I tasted it. Needed more salt, maybe a kick of pepper. Sienna glanced up from her stack of tests, her glasses slipping down her nose. Smells good, she said, smiling that small smile I loved. Better be. I shot back, grinning, and she laughed, soft and easy. The kids burst in from outside, our son waving a muddy stick, our daughter yelling about a bug she'd found. Out, both of you, wash up. I barked, pointing to the sink, and they groaned but obeyed, splashing water everywhere. It was chaos, loud and messy, but it was ours. Chloe's face, those tears she'd tried to sell me, faded a little more every day, replaced by this. Work was good too. I bounced between the three diners, flipping burgers, checking stock, joking with the waitresses. The regulars knew me now. Old Tom with his coffee, the trucker who tipped big, the lady who always asked for extra napkins. They'd nod, say, "Hey, Mike," and I'd nod back, feeling like I belonged. Jacqueline stopped by the first diner one morning. Her tattoos faded, but her glare still sharp. "You didn't screw it up," she said, looking around, then clapped my shoulder and left. High praise from her. I laughed to myself, pouring coffee for a table, and thought about how far I'd come, from a gas station nobody to this. I didn't check on Chloe anymore. No fake social media accounts, no late-night scrolls. I'd done that once, years back, seen her play the grieving widow, but now? I didn't need to know. She was out there, somewhere, living whatever life she'd made after her business tanked, her marriage crumbled. Stephanie and Isla too, maybe still mad, maybe still blaming her. It didn't matter. They'd come begging, and I'd shut the door. That $73.50 check was the last thing I'd ever give them. Just enough to walk away, like they'd left me to do. I didn't feel bad, didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Sienna and I took the kids to the park that weekend, a crisp fall day with leaves crunching under our boots. Our son ran ahead, kicking a ball, while our daughter clung to my hand, pointing at every squirrel. Sienna walked beside me, her arm brushing mine, and we didn't say much, just watched, breathed, lived. I thought about Chloe for a second, her showing up, her voice cracking, and let it go. She couldn't take this from me, couldn't even come close. I'd built it all without her, despite her, and it was better than anything she'd ever offered. You're quiet, Sienna said, nudging me. Just happy. I replied, and she squeezed my hand, knowing I meant it. Back home, we ate the chili, too spicy, the kids complained, but they shoveled it down anyway. I sat at the table, watching them bicker over the last roll, Sienna rolling her eyes at their noise. This was it, the best revenge, if you could call it that. Not some big fight, not rubbing it in their faces, just living well, living real. Chloe wanted me to break, to crawl back, and I hadn't. I'd walked away from that gas station, from her, and kept going. Roy at the shelter, Jacqueline's diner, Sienna's laugh, these kids. Every step was mine, every piece earned. They'd lost, not because I'd beaten them, but because I'd stopped playing their game. The days kept rolling, school runs, diner shifts, quiet nights with Sienna on the couch. I didn't look back, didn't need to. Chloe was a memory, a shadow that couldn't reach me anymore. I'd see her sometimes, in a flash, her smirk, her tears, but it didn't stick. I'd turn the radio up, flip a burger, hug my daughter, and she'd fade. The diners thrived, the kids grew, Sienna and I argued over dumb stuff like whose turn it was to mow the lawn. It was simple, messy, perfect. I'd wake up early, make coffee, stand in our kitchen looking out at the yard, and feel it. Peace, deep and steady. One night, after the kids were in bed, I sat on the porch, a beer in my hand, the air cool against my skin. Sienna came out, wrapped in a blanket, and sat beside me. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice soft. I took a sip, staring at the stars. "Nothing," I said, then smiled. "Everything." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat there, quiet, together. Chloe was gone, really gone, and I was here whole. The best revenge wasn't revenge at all. It was this, right now, a life so good I didn't need to prove anything. I'd made it, and that was enough.
My wife secretly went on a 14-day trip with her work husband. When she got back, I asked one question that froze her. "Do you know what illness he has?" She ran straight to the doctor, but by then it was already too late. The sound of her suitcase wheels on our driveway cut through the November air like a blade through silk, smooth, inevitable, final. I watched from the kitchen window, coffee growing cold in my hands, as my wife of 12 years stepped out of the Uber with the kind of glow people get from expensive vacations and expensive lies. 14 days, 2 full weeks she'd been gone on what she called a critical work retreat to some resort in the Bahamas. A retreat so critical, apparently, that spouses weren't invited. So critical that her phone had been conveniently unreachable for hours at a time. So critical that when I'd called the company's main line to leave a message, the receptionist had paused just a fraction of a second too long before saying she'd pass it along. That pause told me everything. But I said nothing. Not when she left, not during her absence, and not now as she walked up our front steps with that particular lightness in her step that guilt tries to disguise as happiness. The door opened. "James, God, I missed you." Rachel looked radiant. Her skin had that sun-kissed bronze that doesn't come from sitting in conference rooms. Her eyes were bright, rested, alive in a way they hadn't been in months, maybe years. She wore a new linen dress, white and breezy, the kind of thing you buy on vacation when you're trying to become a different version of yourself. She dropped her bags and moved toward me for an embrace. I hugged her back, felt her arms around me, smelled the unfamiliar perfume mixing with sunscreen and something else, something that made my stomach turn. "How was it?" I asked, keeping my voice level, almost disinterested. "Exhausting," she said, pulling back with a performative sigh. "Back-to-back sessions, networking dinners every night. I barely had time to breathe, but productive, really productive." I nodded slowly, took a sip of cold coffee, watched her watching me. She was good. I'd give her that. 12 years of marriage had taught her how to read my moods, how to calibrate her lies to match my temperature. But she didn't know what I knew. Couldn't know that I'd spent the last 14 days becoming a different person myself. The kind of person who checks phone records, who calls in favors, who sits in parking lots outside office buildings waiting for the truth to show its face. That's great, Rach. Really great. I set down my mug. You must be tired. Why don't you shower, unpack? I'll make us lunch. Relief flickered across her face. You're the best. I'm disgusting from the flight. She grabbed her suitcase and headed upstairs. I listened to the familiar sounds of her moving through our house. The bedroom door opening, the suitcase being heaved onto the bed, the bathroom door closing, the shower starting. All of it so normal, so mundane, like the last 2 weeks had been exactly what she said they were. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo again. The one Marcus had sent me. Marcus, her colleague, her work husband, the man she'd been texting at midnight for the past 6 months with messages that started as jokes and evolved into something else entirely. Marcus with his easy smile and his CrossFit body and his habit of putting his hand on the small of my wife's back during office parties. In the photo, they were at a beachside restaurant. Rachel was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on his forearm, her wedding ring catching the sunset light like a small, bitter joke. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. They looked like people who had forgotten that other people existed. Marcus had sent it to me by accident. A group text meant for his college buddies that included my number because we'd once been friends too, back before I understood what he was. The message that followed, wrong chat, man, sorry, came 3 minutes later. Long enough for me to screenshot everything, long enough for the truth to burn itself into my retinas. I deleted the photo and put my phone away. Upstairs, the shower stopped. I heard Rachel humming, actually humming, as she dried off, as she wrapped herself in the towel I'd washed and folded last Tuesday, while she was taking sunset walks with someone else. 40 minutes later, she came downstairs in yoga pants in one of my old college sweatshirts, her wet hair twisted into a bun. She looked younger, softer, like the woman I'd married. For a moment, just at a moment, I felt the muscle memory of love, the old instinct to protect her, to believe in her, to make excuses for the things that didn't add up. Then she smiled at me, and I remembered. Grilled cheese? I asked, already pulling out the bread. Perfect. She sat at the kitchen island, pulled out her phone, started scrolling. Oh my God, I have so many emails. They really worked us to the bone. I buttered the bread, laid cheese on sourdough, tried to keep my hands steady. Did Marcus survive? I know he was worried about the presentation. I said his name casually, like it was nothing, like I didn't know what I knew. Rachel glanced up, and for just a fraction of a second, something flickered in her eyes. Fear, guilt, recognition that we were about to cross into territory we couldn't come back from. Marcus, she said, and her voice was almost perfect. Almost. Yeah, he did great. You know him, always prepared. I do know him, I agreed, flipping the sandwich. That's why I was surprised when I found out. Found out what? She was still scrolling, but her thumb had stopped moving. This was the moment, the cliff edge, the point where our marriage would either bend or break. I plated her sandwich, cut it diagonally the way she liked, set it in front of her with a napkin and a pickle spear. Then I leaned against the counter, crossed my arms, and asked the question I'd been rehearsing for 6 days. Do you know what illness he has? The color drained from her face like water from a tub. The phone slipped from her hand, clattered on the marble countertop. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language, like the words needed time to translate into something her brain could process. What? It came out as barely a whisper. Marcus, I kept my voice calm, almost clinical. The illness, I'm assuming he told you, given how much time you spent together these past 2 weeks. Her hand went to her throat, an unconscious gesture of panic. James, what are you talking about? It's serious, Rachel, the kind of thing that doesn't go away, the kind of thing that spreads if you're not careful. I let that hang in the air between us, watched it sink in. The kind of thing you'd want to get checked out. Soon. Like today, soon. She stood up so fast the bar stool scraped against the floor. What illness? James, what the hell are you talking about? I didn't answer, just looked at her with the kind of steady gaze that said everything and nothing, that confirmed her worst fears without giving her anything concrete to deny or defend against. I need to. She grabbed her purse, her keys, her phone. I need to make a call. Doctor's office is probably at open for another hour, I said helpfully. You might want to ask for a full panel. Given the circumstances, she stared at me like she'd never seen me before. Like I was a stranger wearing her husband's face. Then she turned and walked out the door, her sandwich untouched. Her suitcase still unpacked upstairs, her lie hanging in the air like smoke. I heard her car start, heard the tires squeal as she backed out too fast, heard the engine fade as she sped toward town, toward the clinic, toward whatever test she thought she needed to prove or disprove something I hadn't actually claimed. Only then did I sit down. Only then did I let my hands shake. Only then did I pick up my phone and look at the other photos Marcus had accidentally sent. The ones of them at the pool, at dinner, in a hotel lobby that definitely wasn't a conference center. And only then did I smile. Because there was no illness, no disease, no medical emergency. There was only truth, weaponized. Only fear, precisely deployed. Only the beginning of a revelation that would tear everything down and build something else in its place. I took a bite of my own sandwich and pulled out the folder I'd been keeping hidden in my desk drawer. Inside were phone records, credit card statements, screenshots of deleted texts I'd recovered from our cloud backup, a timeline I'd constructed with the methodical patience of someone who'd had 14 days to become very, very good at detective work. And underneath all of that, the real evidence, the thing that would matter when this was over. But not yet, not today. Today was about the fear, about letting Rachel's imagination do the work I couldn't, about planting a seed of doubt that would grow into a forest of paranoia. Today was about asking one question that would make her run toward the truth while I stayed here, calm and still, waiting for the moment when everything would finally come into the light. I heard my phone buzz, a text from Rachel. At clinic, what illness? What illness? I set the phone face down on the counter and finished my lunch. Outside, November rain began to fall, washing the driveway clean of the tracks her suitcase had made. Inside, I sat in the silence of our house, our home that we'd built together, that held 12 years of memories and promises and lies. And I waited. Because this wasn't about revenge. Not really. This was about justice, about truth, about the moment when someone who thought they'd gotten away with something realizes that the ground beneath them has been slowly, carefully, methodically removed. And all that's left is the fall. My phone buzzed again. Then, again. Then it started ringing. I didn't answer. Let her wonder. Let her worry. Let her feel for just a few hours the kind of sick uncertainty I'd been living with since the moment that photo appeared on my screen. The rain fell harder, drumming against the windows like applause. And I sat in my kitchen, in my house, in my life that was about to become something entirely different, and I waited for Act 2 to begin. The rain had turned into a proper storm by the time Rachel's car pulled back into the driveway. 3 hours had passed, 3 hours during which my phone had collected 17 text messages, 9 missed calls, and 1 voicemail that I'd listened to twice. Not for information, but for the tremor in her voice. The way guilt makes people sound smaller, younger, desperately alone. I was in the living room when she came in, reading a book I wasn't actually reading, turning pages at intervals that suggested casual afternoon leisure rather than calculated psychological warfare. The lamp beside me cast warm light across the room, made everything look soft and safe and normal. A perfect stage for the performance we were about to give. She stood in the doorway, soaked through despite the short walk from car to house. Her hair hung in wet ropes around her face. Her eyes were red, from crying or rain, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. She looked fragile in a way that would have broken me a week ago. They ran every test they had, she said, her voice hollow. Blood work, cultures, everything. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. I looked up from my book, marked my place with a finger. That's good news. Is it? She took a step into the room. James, what illness? What were you talking about? I set the book aside slowly, deliberately. Let the silence stretch between us like a rubber band pulled to its breaking point. I think you should sit down, Rachel. I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me what the hell is going on. Sit down. Something in my tone made her obey. She sank onto the couch across from me, pulling her wet cardigan tight around her body like armor. Water dripped from her clothes onto our hardwood floors, making small dark circles that spread and disappeared. "There's no illness," I said quietly. The words hit her like a slap. "What? Marcus doesn't have an illness. He's fine. Perfectly healthy as far as I know." Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disrelief, anger, then back to confusion, cycling through emotions like someone trying to find the right key for a lock. "Then why?" "Because I needed you to run," I interrupted. "I needed you to panic. I needed you to feel, even for just a few hours, the kind of fear that makes you question everything you thought you knew." She stood up. "You're insane. You sent me to a clinic, made me think I'd been exposed to some disease, made me terrified that I'd—" She stopped abruptly, realizing what she'd almost said. I leaned forward. "That you'd what, Rachel? Caught something from Marcus? Because that's interesting phrasing. Why would you assume you'd caught something from Marcus specifically? Unless you were in a position to catch something from him. Unless you'd been close enough, intimate enough, for that to be a concern." The color that had returned to her face drained away again. "We didn't. I haven't. Don't." I held up a hand. "Please don't insult both of us by lying right now. We're past that. We're so far past that." She sank back onto the couch, and I watched her realize that this conversation wasn't going the way she'd expected. That she'd walked into something she couldn't charm or explain or rationalize her way out of. "How long have you known?" she whispered. "Which part? That you and Marcus have been texting each other at midnight for 6 months? That you've been deleting messages from your phone but not from our cloud backup? That the work retreat was actually a couple's package at the Azure Bay Resort that he booked using his personal credit card?" I paused. "Or that you've been lying to my face every single day, asking me about my day, kissing me goodnight, making plans for our anniversary while you were planning something entirely different with someone else." Each question landed like a stone in still water, sending ripples across her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, "I can explain." "I don't want you to explain." I stood up, walked to the window, watched rain run down the glass. "Explanations are for misunderstandings." This wasn't a misunderstanding, Rachel. This was a choice, dozens of choices, actually. Every text, every deleted message, every lie about working late or going to the gym or needing space, every single one was a choice you made to betray me. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Her voice was small, breaking. It evolved. We were friends. We worked together every day. And he understood things about me that I what? I turned from the window. That I didn't understand, that I failed to provide? Go ahead, Rachel. Tell me how this is somehow my fault. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you got bored or restless or whatever it is people get when they decide that their marriage vows were more like marriage suggestions. And instead of talking to me, instead of fighting for us, I gestured vaguely toward her, toward the space where our marriage used to be. "You just found someone easier." She was crying now, proper tears streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater. "I'm sorry, God, James, I'm so sorry. It was stupid and selfish, and I never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me. You are hurting me. Every second you sit there trying to make yourself feel better with apologies that don't mean anything, you're hurting me." I walked to the bookshelf where I'd hidden the folder, pulled it out, set it on the coffee table between us with a sound like a judge's gavel. "This is 6 months of evidence. Phone records, credit card statements, security footage from the office parking garage, showing you leaving together at midnight on dates when you told me you were working late. Screenshots of texts where you called him baby and where he told you what he wanted to do to you when you were finally alone." Rachel stared at the folder like it was a bomb. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself," I corrected. "There's a difference. You created this situation and I responded to it. Don't try to make me the villain in your story." She reached for the folder with a shaking hand, opened it, started flipping through pages. I watched her face as she saw it all laid out, the evidence of her betrayal organized chronologically. highlighted, annotated. I'd spent 14 days building this case with the thoroughness of a prosecutor preparing for trial. "What are you going to do with this?" she asked finally. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're capable of telling me the truth. The whole truth. Not the edited version you have been rehearsing on the drive home. Not the sanitized story where you minimize what happened and maximize my supposed failures as a husband. The actual, complete truth about you and Marcus." She closed the folder, pressed her palms against it like she could somehow erase what was inside. "We slept together." The words hung in the air. Even though had known for days, really, hearing her say it out loud was different. It made it real in a way that evidence never could. It transformed abstract betrayal into concrete fact. "When?" My voice sounded distant to my own ears. "The first time was in July, after the company summer party. We'd both been drinking, and he drove me home because you were out of town, and I invited him in for coffee, and I don't need the play-by-play. How many times total?" She hesitated. "I don't know, maybe 10, 12. "And the Bahamas trip?" "We were together the whole time. It wasn't a work retreat. There was no conference. We wanted time alone, away from everything." I nodded slowly, absorbing this. "Did you use our savings account to pay for your half of the trip? The account we've been building for the down payment on a bigger house?" Her silence was answer enough. "Okay." I walked back to my chair, sat down, picked up my book. "You should pack a bag." "What?" "A bag, Rachel. Clothes, toiletries, whatever you need for a few days. I think it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while." "James, please. This isn't negotiable. You violated our marriage. You lied to me for 6 months. You used our money to fund your affair. And now you need to leave. We'll figure out the rest later. But right now, tonight, I need you to not be here." She started sobbing, deep, gasping sobs that shook her whole body. "I don't have anywhere to go." "You have parents 20 minutes away. You have friends. You have Marcus." I opened my book to a random page. "You'll figure it out. You're good at figuring things out behind my back." "I love you," she said desperately. "I still love you, James. This thing with Marcus, it doesn't change how I feel about you." I looked at her over the top of my book, and maybe she saw something in my face that scared her, because she flinched. "Rachel, you spent the last 14 days in paradise with another man. You swam in the ocean with him, slept in his arms, woke up next to him, planned a future with him. And during all of that, how many times did you call me?" "3. 3 5-minute conversations where you fed me lies about conference schedules and networking events. So don't tell me you love me. Don't cheapen that word more than you already have." She sat there for another minute, maybe hoping I'd change my mind. Maybe trying to find some combination of words that would fix this. But there was no combination, no magic spell, no way back to the morning when she'd walked in glowing with sun and secrets. Finally, she stood up and walked upstairs. I listened to her moving through our bedroom, opening drawers, pulling clothes from hangers. The sounds of a life being dismantled, one article of clothing at a time. 20 minutes later, she came down with a duffel bag and her laptop case. She paused at the door, looked back at me. "What happens now?" "Now you leave. And tomorrow we start figuring out what the truth costs." "I really am sorry, James." "I know you are. That's the saddest part of all of this. I genuinely believe you're sorry. You're just not sorry enough to have not done it in the first place." She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something else, then thought better of it. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Her car started. The engine faded into the distance. And then I was alone. I set down the book I hadn't been reading and walked to the window. The storm had passed, leaving everything wet and clean and new. The street lights reflected in puddles, making the world look like it was floating. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "I'm at my parents', please don't hate me." I turned the phone face down and went to the kitchen. Opened the fridge, pulled out the leftover grilled cheese from lunch, ate it cold standing over the sink. It tasted like nothing. Tomorrow would be hard. Tomorrow would be conversations with lawyers and accountants, decisions about who got what, divisions of a life we'd built together. Tomorrow would be telling our friends, our families, watching the shock and sympathy and judgment ripple through our social circle. But tonight was just me in the house in the rain-washed silence. I cleaned up the kitchen, turned off the lights, went upstairs to our bedroom. Her closet was half empty now, gaps where her favorite dresses had hung. The bathroom counter had spaces where her products used to be. The whole room felt larger, emptier, like a museum of a marriage. I lay in bed, our bed, and stared at the ceiling, and for the first time in 14 days, I felt the weight of what I'd set in motion. The question about the illness had been calculated cruelty, psychological warfare designed to make her panic, to make her feel a fraction of the fear and betrayal I'd been living with. It had worked perfectly, maybe too perfectly, but this wasn't over, not even close, because I'd learned something important over the past 2 weeks, something about myself I hadn't known before. I was very, very good at patience, at planning, at playing a long game that no one else could see until it was too late. And Rachel had given me 6 months of material to work with, 6 months of lies and betrayals and choices that could be documented, proven, used. Not for revenge. I had to keep telling myself that. This wasn't about revenge. This was about making sure that when this was over, when the divorce was final and the property divided and the stories told, the truth would be clear. Not her version of the truth, where she'd somehow paint herself as the victim of a distant husband. Not Marcus's version, where he was just a nice guy who fell in love with someone who happened to be married. The actual truth, clean and sharp and undeniable. I closed my eyes and thought about the folder, about the evidence I'd gathered, about the pieces I'd carefully arranged. But there was more, so much more that she didn't know yet. Information I'd uncovered that would change everything. My phone buzzed again, another text from Rachel, then another. I could imagine what they said. More apologies, more explanations, more attempts to manage the narrative. I didn't look. Not tonight. Tonight was for sleeping in a bed that felt too big, in a house that felt too quiet, in a life that would never be the same. Tomorrow we'd start the next phase. Tomorrow, she'd learn what that question about the illness really meant. Tomorrow, the truth would continue its slow, inevitable march into the light. But for now, I just lay there in the dark, listening to the sound of my own breathing, feeling the weight of my wedding ring on my finger, wondering when exactly I'd take it off. Not yet. Not until this was finished. The ring was evidence too, in its way. Evidence of promises made and broken, of a contract violated, of trust weaponized and destroyed. I twisted it around my finger in the darkness, feeling the familiar groove it had worn into my skin over 12 years. Soon, I thought, soon. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping across the ceiling. Then darkness again, then silence. And in that silence, I began planning tomorrow. Morning came too early and too bright. Sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close, turning our bedroom into a gallery of empty spaces. I woke disoriented, reaching automatically for Rachel before remembering. The sheets on her side were cold, undisturbed, accusatory in their smoothness. I lay there for a moment, taking inventory of how I felt. Angry, yes. Hurt, definitely. But underneath those expected emotions was something else, something clearer and colder. Purpose. The kind of focused determination you get when you stop hoping things will fix themselves and start accepting that you're going to have to break them further before anything can heal. My phone showed 8 missed calls and 14 new messages, all from Rachel, except for one from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored them all and went downstairs to make coffee, moving through the morning routine with mechanical precision. Everything felt different now. The kitchen where I'd made her breakfast 1,000 times, the living room where we'd watched movies, the doorway where she'd stood dripping rainwater, and lies just 12 hours ago. The coffee was brewing when my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized. David Chen, my best friend since college, calling at 7:30 on a Sunday morning, which meant Rachel had already started working her side of the story. "You've talked to her," I said instead of hello. Jesus Christ, James. She called me at midnight sobbing, said you kicked her out, accused her of some affair, that you'd completely lost it. David's voice was careful, walking the tightrope of friendship. I told her I needed to hear your side before. It's not an affair, I interrupted. An affair implies secrecy and shame. What Rachel had with Marcus was more like a parallel relationship. 6 months, David. 6 months of texts and late nights in a 2-week vacation together while I thought she was at a work conference. Silence on the other end. Then, shit. Yeah. Do you have proof? Because she's telling everyone you're paranoid, that you've been accusing her of things based on. I have a 60-page dossier of proof. Phone records, credit card statements, hotel reservations, security footage, text messages she thought she'd deleted. I have a photo of them at a beachside restaurant in the Bahamas on a date when she was supposedly in a conference room in Orlando. I have receipts for romantic dinners charged to our joint account that she told me were client meetings. I poured coffee, watched it steam. I have enough proof to convince a jury, David. I definitely have enough to convince our friends. Another pause. What do you need? And that's why David had been my best friend for 15 years. No judgment, no wasted sympathy, just straight to the practical question. I need you to not take sides publicly yet. Let her tell her story. Let Marcus tell his. Let them think they're controlling the narrative. Why? Because people always tell more truth when they think they're getting away with lies. And I need to know exactly what story they're selling before I show everyone the receipts. David stopped. This is really calculated, man. Are you okay? No, I said honestly, I'm not okay. My wife spent the last 6 months building a life with someone else while I was here being faithful and trusting and stupid. But I will be okay eventually. And when I am, I want to be able to look back and know I handled this the right way. Not the angry way, not the revenge way, the right way. The right way, David repeated slowly. And what way is that? The way where everyone knows exactly what happened, where she can't rewrite history or play the victim, where our friends and family understand that I didn't give up on our marriage. She did. Where if our kids ask about this someday, you don't have kids. Not yet, but we were trying. I took a sip of coffee, felt it burn. She was on fertility treatments, David. We've been trying for a year. All those doctor's appointments, all those hopes and disappointments. And the whole time, she was sleeping with Marcus. I heard him breathe out slowly. That's really dark, James. Truth usually is. We talked for a few more minutes about logistics. He'd come by later. We'd go through everything. He'd help me think through next steps. When we hung up, I felt marginally more human. One friend who knew the truth. One person who wouldn't look at me with pity or suspicion. My phone buzzed. Rachel again. Can we please talk? I know you're angry, but we need to discuss this like adults. I almost laughed. Like adults. As if she hadn't spent half a year acting like a teenager sneaking around behind her parents' back. But she was right about one thing. We did need to talk. Not for her reasons. For mine. I texted back. Come by at 2 p.m. Bring Marcus. The 3 dots appeared immediately, disappeared, appeared again. Then, why would I bring Marcus? Because this involves him, because I want everyone at the table, because I'm done with separate conversations and managed truths. 2 p.m., both of you. The dots appeared and disappeared several more times before she finally replied, okay. I spent the morning preparing. Not emotionally, there was no preparing for that, but practically. I cleared the dining room table, set out 3 chairs, laid out 3 copies of the folder I'd assembled. Made it look less like our home and more like a deposition room. Clinical, official, the kind of space where comfortable lies die under harsh fluorescent truth. At 1:30, David arrived with sandwiches I wouldn't eat and emotional support I desperately needed. He looked through the folder while I stared out the window, and I heard him swearing softly as he turned pages. James, this is really thorough. I had 14 days with nothing to do but think and investigate. The text messages, he said, holding up a printed page. Did you see this one from July 23rd? I had seen them all, including the one he was looking at, where Rachel told Marcus that I was safe but boring, and that being with him made her feel alive again. That one had been particularly hard to read at 3 in the morning while she was swimming in the Caribbean with the man who made her feel alive. I saw it, I said simply. And you still want to do this face to face? You could just file for divorce, let the lawyers handle everything. I could, but I need to see his face when he realizes I know everything. I need to watch them try to explain this while sitting in the house they betrayed. I stopped, trying to find the right words. I need to witness this, David, not as revenge, as closure, as confirmation that I'm not crazy for feeling betrayed, that what happened actually happened the way I think it did. He nodded slowly. I get it. I'll stay if you want backup. No, this needs to be just the three of us, but thank you. At exactly 2 o'clock, Rachel's car pulled up. She sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before getting out. No Marcus. She walked to the door alone, knocked softly even though she still had her keys, waited for me to let her in like a guest in her own home. She looked terrible. Red eyes, no makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Part of me, the part that had loved her for 12 years, wanted to comfort her. The rest of me remembered why she looked this way. He's not coming, she said before I could ask. Marcus, he said this is between us, that he doesn't want to get in the middle of our marriage. I almost smiled at that. That's convenient. Getting in the middle of our marriage was fine when it involved Caribbean vacations and midnight texts, but now that there's consequences, he's suddenly principled. All about boundaries? He's scared, Rachel said quietly. You have to understand, James, he never meant for this to. I don't have to understand anything about what Marcus meant or didn't mean. But fine, he's not here. We'll do this with just us. I gestured to the dining room. Sit. She saw the folders laid out on the table and went pale. What is all this? Sit down. She sat. I took the chair across from her, the table between us like a demilitarized zone. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Husband and wife, stranger and stranger. Before we start, I said, I need you to understand something. Everything I'm about to show you, everything I know, I discovered on my own. I didn't hire a private investigator. I didn't hack your accounts. I just paid attention. I checked the phone records we both have access to. I looked at credit card statements for accounts we jointly own. I recovered texts from cloud backups we both use. Everything was right there, Rachel. You just assumed I'd never look. She was crying again, silent tears tracking down her face. I'm so sorry. Stop apologizing and start explaining. Start with July, the company's summer party. You told me you got a ride home with Sarah from accounting. I lied. I know you lied. I want to hear you say what actually happened. I want to hear you tell the truth for once. She took a shaky breath. Marcus drove me home. We'd been flirting for weeks, maybe months. Nothing physical, just there was this tension between us. And that night we'd both been drinking, and he drove me home, and I invited him in. I told myself it was just coffee, just a nightcap, but I knew. Somewhere deep down, I knew what I was inviting. Go on. We kissed in the kitchen, right there where you make me breakfast. And then we went upstairs, to our bedroom, to our bed. She was sobbing now, the words coming in gasps. Afterwards, I told myself it was a mistake, that it would never happen again. But then he texted me the next day, and we met for lunch, and it kept happening. Once a week, sometimes more, hotels mostly. Sometimes his apartment when his roommate was traveling. Using money from our joint account. Yes. Money we were saving for a house. Yes. Money we were saving for the family we were trying to start. She flinched like I'd struck her. Yes. I opened the first folder, slid it across the table to her. This is every text message between you and Marcus for the past 6 months. I've highlighted the ones where you discussed me, the ones where you complained about our marriage, the ones where you planned your future together. She looked at the folder like it might bite her. I can't read these. Yes, you can, because I had to read them. I had to sit in this house alone while you were in the Bahamas, and read every single message where you told another man things you should have told me, where you shared intimacies with him that belonged to our marriage, where you built a whole separate relationship while I was here trusting you. James, please, read it, all of it. I want you to see what you did from the outside. I want you to understand that this wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was a sustained campaign of deception. This was you choosing over and over again to betray me. She opened the folder with shaking hands, started reading. I watched her face cycle through emotions: shame, regret, recognition, horror. Watched her see herself through my eyes, see her betrayal documented and highlighted and undeniable. There's more, I said when she was halfway through. I slid her the second folder. Credit card statements, hotel reservations, restaurant receipts, a financial record of your affair, paid for with our money. She looked at the numbers, the dates, the paper trail of her lies. I'll pay it back, every cent. I'll get a second job. This isn't about money. I pulled the third folder toward me, didn't open it yet. This is about truth, about making sure that when this is over, when we're divorced and divided and dealing with the wreckage, the record is clear. You didn't leave because I was a bad husband. You didn't cheat because I neglected you. You made choices, Rachel. Conscious, deliberate choices to lie and betray and destroy what we built. I know, she whispered. I know what I did. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, I don't think you really understand the magnitude of this. You violated our marriage vows. You exposed me to health risks without my consent. You stole from our savings. You lied to our friends and family. You made me doubt my own sanity when I started suspecting something was wrong. You gaslit me, Rachel. For 6 months, you made me feel crazy for noticing that something was off. She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. What do you want from me? I've apologized. I've admitted everything. What more can I do? I opened the third folder. Inside was a single document, a printout of an email Marcus had sent to a mutual friend, dated 3 weeks ago, detailing his relationship with my wife and his plans for their future together. Plans that included her leaving me, moving in with him, starting a life together. Plans she'd apparently agreed to. Did you tell him you'd leave me? I asked quietly. She looked at the email and something in her face crumpled. We talked about it. We fantasized about it. But I was never going to actually, except you were in the Bahamas with him for 2 weeks, Rachel. 2 weeks that you could have used to tell me the truth, to end our marriage honestly, to give me the dignity of a choice. Instead, you came home, kissed me, told me you missed me, and acted like everything was normal. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. You knew exactly what you wanted. You wanted both. You wanted the security and history and home we'd built together, and you wanted the excitement and passion of something new. You wanted to have your cake and fuck it too. The vulgarity made her flinch, but I didn't care. The problem is that's not how life works. That's not how marriage works. You don't get to destroy something and then be surprised when it breaks. She sat there, surrounded by evidence of her betrayal, looking smaller and younger than I'd ever seen her. What happens now? I pulled out one more document from my jacket pocket, a petition for divorce that my lawyer had drawn up yesterday. I slid it across the table. You're going to sign this. It's a no-fault divorce, which is more generous than you deserve. But I'm not interested in dragging this through courts. It splits our assets 50-50, which again is more than fair given that you stole from our savings to fund your affair. It includes a statement that you acknowledge the infidelity and waive any claim to alimony or spousal support. She stared at the document. And if I don't sign, then I file for an at-fault divorce. I submit all of this evidence to the court. I subpoena Marcus, your colleagues, everyone who knew or suspected what was happening. I make this as public and painful as possible. I let a judge decide how to divide our assets, and I guarantee you it won't be 50-50. I lean forward. But more than that, Rachel, I tell everyone the truth, not your sanitized version where you were confused and made mistakes. The real truth, documented and proven. I let our friends and family see exactly who you are and what you did. That's blackmail. That's consequences. You want to move forward with Marcus? Fine. Sign the papers, and in 6 months you'll be free to do whatever you want. But you don't get to do it on my dime or with my reputation. You don't get to paint yourself as the victim of a bad marriage when you're the one who destroyed a good one. She picked up a pen with a shaking hand. I really did love you. I still do. Then you have a funny way of showing it. She signed. 4 places, her signature getting messier each time, her tears smudging the ink. When she was done, she pushed the papers back to me. I'll be out of the house completely by next week, she said. I'll just take my clothes and personal things. You can have everything else. I don't want everything else. I want to split things fairly. This isn't about punishing you, Rachel. It's about ending this honestly. She stood up, looked around the dining room like she was seeing it for the last time. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. You deserved better than this. Better than me. Yeah, I said, I did. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the knob. The question yesterday, about the illness. There really isn't one. No, go. Then why? Because I needed you to feel what I felt when I found out. The fear, the uncertainty, the sick dread of knowing something terrible had happened and not knowing how bad it would be. I needed you to run to a doctor and beg for tests and sit in a waiting room imagining the worst. Because that's what I did, Rachel. When I found out about you and Marcus, I went to a clinic and got tested for every STD they offer because you'd been sleeping with me and him, and I had no idea what I'd been exposed to. I met her eyes. I wanted you to feel that, just for a few hours, just to understand. She paled. Were you? I'm clean, negative for everything, but I had to live with that fear for a week while I waited for results. And you should know what that feels like. You should carry that weight, even if just for a moment. She nodded slowly, opened the door, walked out. This time I knew it was for the last time as my wife. Next time she'd come back, it would be to pack boxes, to sort through the debris of our life together, to figure out who got the coffee maker and who got the photos from our honeymoon. But that would be later. That would be the mechanical, practical end of things. This had been the emotional end, the moment where our marriage officially died, documented and divided and done. I sat alone at the dining room table, surrounded by folders of evidence, holding divorce papers with her signature still wet, and I felt nothing. Not relief, not satisfaction, not even grief, just emptiness. Just the hollow echo of what used to be. My phone buzzed. A text from David. How did it go? I looked around the room at the chair where Rachel had sat, at the folder she'd read, at the dissolution of 12 years reduced to signatures on legal documents. It's done, I typed back. Phase 1 complete. Because this wasn't over. Not really. The divorce papers were signed, yes, but there was still so much more she didn't know. Still so much more that would come to light in the days and weeks ahead. Still the truth I hadn't told her yet. The biggest truth of all. But not today. Today had been about confrontation and confession. Tomorrow would be about revelation. I gathered up the folders, locked the signed divorce petition in my desk, and went upstairs to bed. The house felt different now, not mine, not ours, just a space where 2 people used to live before one of them burned it all down. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. And in the silence, I thought about tomorrow and what came next and the final piece of the puzzle that Rachel didn't even know existed yet. Soon, I thought, soon she'll understand the real cost of what she's done. But not yet. Not tonight. Tonight was for endings. Tomorrow would be for the truth. 3 days after Rachel signed the divorce papers, Marcus finally called me. I was in my home office, our former shared space, now just mine, sorting through tax documents and trying to figure out how to divide a life. When his name appeared on my phone screen, I let it ring 4 times before answering, each ring a small assertion of control. James, his voice was cautious, overly friendly in that way people get when they know they've done something unforgivable and are trying to pretend they haven't. Hey man, I've been meaning to reach out. Have you? I kept my voice flat, made it a statement instead of a question. Yeah, listen, I just wanted to, Rachel told me you guys are getting divorced, and I wanted to say I'm sorry, That really sucks. Marriage is hard. I almost admired the audacity of it, calling me to offer sympathy for the marriage he'd helped destroy, speaking about it like it was some natural disaster rather than a deliberate demolition. Is that why you called, Marcus? To tell me marriage is hard? A pause. I called because I think we should talk, in person. Clear the air. We used to be friends. We were never friends. We were friendly. There's a difference. Friends don't sleep with each other's wives. Another pause, longer this time. Look, I know you're angry. I'm not angry. And as I said it, I realized it was true. The rage that had consumed me for weeks had burned itself out, leaving something colder and clearer in its place. Anger implies I'm still surprised by what happened. I'm past that now. Then why won't you meet with me? Let me explain. Explain what? The mechanics of how you seduced my wife? The rationale for why 6 months of lying was justified? The philosophy behind booking a romantic vacation with someone else's spouse? I spun my chair to face the window, watched a cardinal land on the fence outside. I already know the story, Marcus. Rachel told me everything. She told you her version. I think you should hear mine. Why would your version be any different? Because there are things she doesn't know. Things about why He stopped abruptly. Just meet me. One coffee. That's all I'm asking. Something in his tone caught my attention. A thread of desperation, of calculation. He wanted something specific from this meeting, needed to control some aspect of the narrative that Rachel hadn't given him access to. Fine, I said. Tomorrow, Java House on Main Street, 9 a.m. Thank you. Really, James, I appreciate. I hung up before he could finish. Appreciation from the man who'd betrayed me wasn't currency I was interested in accepting. That night I lay in bed, the same bed where this had all started, where Rachel had brought her lies and her guilt and her betrayal, and thought about what Marcus might want. What information he was scared I had, or desperate to share, or hoping to learn. The call hadn't been about clearing the air or offering apologies. It had been reconnaissance, a way to gauge what I knew, what Rachel had told me, where the fault lines in their story might be. Which meant there were fault lines, which meant the story I'd heard from Rachel wasn't complete. I fell asleep thinking about what those gaps might contain. The next morning I arrived at Java House 15 minutes early, ordered black coffee I didn't drink, and took a table by the window where I could watch Marcus arrive. Control of space, control of timing, control of the performance. Small things that added up to power. He walked in at exactly 9, dressed in the expensive casual way of men who work in tech. Designer jeans, tasteful sweater. Watch that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He looked tired. Good, he should be tired. He'd spent the last 6 months juggling 2 lives, and now one of them had collapsed. James? He extended his hand as he approached. I looked at it, left it hanging there in the air between us, watched him slowly retract it. Sit down, Marcus. He sat, ordered coffee from a passing server, arranged his face into an expression of somber concern. I'm glad you agreed to meet. Let's skip the pretense. You didn't call to apologize or explain. You called because you're worried about something. So tell me what it is and we can both get on with our mornings. He blinked, the mask slipping for just a moment. I'm not worried. I just thought we should clear the air. You already said that on the phone. It wasn't convincing then either. I leaned back, crossed my arms. Rachel signed divorce papers 3 days ago. She's moving in with you next week. You won, Marcus. You got what you wanted. So why do you look like someone who lost? His coffee arrived. He added cream, stirred it, used the ritual to avoid answering. Finally, did Rachel tell you why it started between us? She said you'd been flirting for months, that it escalated at the summer party. That's true, but it's not. He took a breath. James, your marriage was already over when I came into the picture. I felt a flash of heat behind my eyes, the ember of anger reigniting. Our marriage was fine. Was it? Because Rachel told me she'd been unhappy for years, that you were distant, disconnected, that you'd stopped really seeing her. She said she felt invisible in her own life. And you believed her? I leaned forward. Or did you just like having permission to pursue a married woman? I believed her because it's true. He met my eyes with something that looked like genuine conviction. I'm not the villain here, James. I fell in love with someone who was already leaving you emotionally. I just gave her somewhere to go. The audacity of it took my breath away. You're rewriting history to make yourself feel better. Rachel and I had problems. Every long-term marriage does, but we were working on them. Or at least I thought we were, until I found out she was working on you instead. She said you'd frame it that way, that you'd make her the betrayer when you were the one who checked out of the marriage years ago. I stared at him, this man who'd shared my wife's bed and apparently her revisionist history. Is that what she told you? That I'm the reason for her affair? Not the reason, but part of it. James, I'm not trying to hurt you more than you're already hurt. I'm trying to help you understand that this didn't happen in a vacuum. Rachel didn't wake up one day and decide to destroy her marriage for fun. She was lonely. She was drowning, and You what? Saved her? I laughed, a bitter sound that made the couple at the next table glance over. You're a hero in your own story, Marcus. The knight who rescued the sad, neglected wife from her terrible husband. It's a nice narrative, clean, simple, makes you feel good about fucking someone else's spouse. He flinched at the language. I didn't plan for this to happen. No one ever does, but it did happen. And you participated in it, and now you're trying to sell me a story where I'm somehow partially responsible for my wife's infidelity. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo album I'd created specifically for this meeting. Let me show you something. I turned the phone to face him. On the screen was a text message thread between Rachel and me dated from May through November, the entire duration of her affair. Messages where I asked about her day, suggested date nights, sent her funny memes, told her I loved her. Messages where she responded with one-word answers, declined invitations, said she was too tired or too busy or too stressed. This is what disconnected looks like in our marriage, Marcus. Me trying and her pulling away. Me suggesting therapy and her saying we didn't need it. Me planning a 20th anniversary trip. We got married at 22, so year 12 was big for us, and her saying she couldn't get time off work. I swiped to another screenshot. Except she could get time off work. She just wanted to spend it with you instead. He looked at the messages and something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe, or recognition. Rachel told you what she needed you to hear to make herself the victim, I continued. She painted our marriage as dead so you wouldn't feel guilty about dancing on its grave. But look at those texts, Marcus. Look at me trying and her lying. And tell me again how I'm the one who checked out. People can be lonely even in relationships where the other person is trying, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Sometimes trying isn't enough. You're right. Sometimes it's not. But you know what would have been enough? Her telling me the truth. Her saying she was unhappy, that we needed to change something, that she was considering leaving. That would have been enough. Instead, she lied, and you helped her, and now you're here trying to make me complicit in my own betrayal. He set down his coffee cup with a clink that sounded too loud. Why did you really agree to meet me? Because I wanted to see if you'd tell me the truth about something. I leaned forward. Rachel said this started in July, at the summer party, but that's not true, is it? His face went very still. What do you mean? I mean, I've seen the phone records, Marcus. Texts between you and her going back to February, hundreds of them. Increasingly intimate, increasingly inappropriate. The July party wasn't the beginning. It was just when the emotional affair became physical. He looked away, jaw clenching. That's semantics. No, it's honesty, or the lack of it. You and Rachel have been lying so long you've started believing your own story. The poor, lonely wife, the noble other man, the distant husband. But the evidence doesn't support that narrative. The evidence showed two people who actively pursued an affair, who made hundreds of conscious choices to betray a marriage, who lied not just to me, but to everyone around them. What do you want from me? He sounded tired suddenly, defeated. An apology? Permission? For me to admit I'm a terrible person? I want you to stop pretending you're not. I slid a folder across the table, one I'd prepared specifically for him. This is a copy of everything I showed Rachel. Phone records, credit card statements, text messages, photos, your entire affair, documented. I gave Rachel the courtesy of seeing it first. Now you get the same. He opened the folder slowly, started reading. I watched the blood drain from his face as he turned pages, as he saw his relationship with my wife laid out in stark black and white, evidence he'd probably convinced himself didn't exist. Why are you showing me this? He asked without looking up. Because I want you to understand something. This doesn't end with divorce papers and moving trucks. This ends when I decide it ends. And right now, I haven't decided yet. He looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means I have choices, Marcus. I can file an at-fault divorce and make all of this public record. I can share these documents with your employer. I'm sure they'd be interested to know their employees are using company time and resources for extramarital affairs. I can tell your parents, your friends, anyone who'll listen about what kind of man you really are. You're threatening me. I'm explaining consequences. You made choices. Those choices have implications beyond just getting to sleep with my wife. And I'm the one who gets to decide what those implications are. He closed the folder, pushed it away like it might contaminate him. Rachel said you were being vindictive. I didn't believe her, but maybe she was right. Vindictive would be ruining your life because you ruined mine. What I'm doing is giving you the same choice I gave Rachel. Cooperate with an honest dissolution of this mess, or watch me make it as painful as possible. I pulled the folder back toward me. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me a full written statement about your relationship with Rachel. Dates, locations, the truth about when it started and how it developed. Every relevant detail. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll subpoena you for the divorce proceedings. I'll put you on a witness stand and make you answer these questions in front of a judge and court reporter. Your name will be in public records forever as the man who broke up a 12-year marriage. Or you can write it down privately. Give me the closure of knowing the complete truth, and we can all move forward quietly. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You've really thought this through. I've had a lot of time to think. 14 days alone while you and Rachel were in paradise. Weeks before that, when I started suspecting something was wrong. Hours and hours to sit with betrayal and decide how to respond to it. I stood up, left money on the table for my untouched coffee. You have until Friday to email me that statement. After that, I file the at-fault divorce and let the courts handle everything. And if I send you the statement, then what? Then we're done. You get Rachel, I get the truth, and we never have to speak again. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing, Marcus. That story about Rachel being lonely and invisible, you might want to ask yourself why she told you that. Because in my experience, people who cheat don't usually start with, "My marriage is perfect." They start with stories that justify what they're already planning to do. She told you what you needed to hear to make yourself feel better about pursuing her, and you believed it because you wanted to. I left him sitting there with the folder and the truth and the slowly dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, he'd been played as much as I had. The email arrived Thursday night, 30 hours before my deadline. Subject line, Statement, Marcus Chen. No text in the body, just an attached document. I poured myself a whiskey, the expensive bottle Rachel and I had been saving for a special occasion, because what occasion was more special than the end of a marriage? And opened the attachment. It was 18 pages, single-spaced, exhaustively detailed. Marcus had done exactly what I'd asked, documented everything with the thoroughness of someone who understood that half-truths would only make things worse. He'd started with their first private lunch in February, detailed the progression of texts and meetings, admitted to the emotional affair that had preceded the physical one. He'd included things Rachel hadn't told me. Weekends when she'd said she was visiting her sister, but was actually with him. Late nights at the office that were really hotel rooms downtown. Lies upon lies, upon lies. But it was the ending that stopped me cold. I want to be clear about something, Marcus had written. Rachel told me your marriage was over. She said you'd grown apart, that divorce was inevitable, that she was just waiting for the right time to tell you. She said you hadn't been intimate in over a year, that you'd stopped trying, that you'd essentially become roommates. I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because it made what we were doing feel less like destruction and more like inevitability. But after meeting with you, after seeing those text messages where you were clearly still trying, still invested in your marriage, I have to acknowledge that I may have been lied to. Not about everything. I do believe Rachel was unhappy, but about the degree of that unhappiness and about whether your marriage was truly beyond repair. I'm not writing this to excuse my behavior. What I did was wrong regardless of Rachel's honesty or lack thereof. But I think you deserve to know that the woman you were married to may have been telling both of us different versions of the truth. She told you she was at conferences and work events. She told me you didn't care where she was, and both stories made sense in isolation. But together they reveal someone who was managing two narratives simultaneously. I don't know what that means for her, for us, for any of this, but I wanted you to have all the information. Not because I think it changes anything. Your marriage is still over, and that's largely my fault. But because you asked for the complete truth, and this is part of it. I'm sorry, James, for all of it, but especially for not asking harder questions about what I was really participating in. I wanted to believe I was saving someone. I'm starting to think I was just convenient. I read it 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of complexity I wasn't ready to process. Rachel had lied to both of us, had crafted separate realities for her husband and her lover, had managed contradictions that should have been impossible, had played us against each other without either of us knowing there was a game. The manipulation was breathtaking in its scope, the calculated nature of it, the way she'd made me doubt myself while making Marcus feel like a hero, the way she'd kept us both believing our own versions of reality while she lived in a third space altogether. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Can we talk? I need to get some things from the house this weekend. I looked at her message, thought about Marcus's statement, thought about the lies layered on more lies. And I realized this wasn't over, not even close, because there was one more truth I hadn't shared yet, one more piece of evidence that would change everything. The biggest revelation of all, the thing I'd been saving for exactly the right moment. And that moment, I decided, was now. I texted back, come by Saturday at 10 a.m., bring boxes for your things. And Rachel, bring your birth control pills. The 3 dots appeared immediately, then stopped, then appeared again. Finally, why? You'll see, I typed, Saturday at 10, don't be late. I sent it, turned off my phone, and sat in the darkness of my office with Marcus's confession and my whiskey and the knowledge that in 2 days everything would change again. Because Rachel didn't know that I knew. Didn't know that while she'd been lying to me about her affair, she'd been lying about something else too. Something bigger. Something that would reframe everything that had happened and everything that was about to happen. Saturday at 10 a.m., the final truth would come out, and then, finally, this would really be over. I raised my glass to the empty room, to the ghost of my marriage, to the man I'd been before all of this started. Phase 2, I said to no one. Complete. Then I drank and waited for Saturday and the reckoning that was coming. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in fog, the kind of gray November weather that makes everything look muted and undefined. I woke at 6, made coffee I couldn't taste, and spent 4 hours preparing the house for what was coming. Not cleaning, though I did that too, but arranging, setting the stage, creating the precise environment for truth to land with maximum impact. The dining room table, scene of so many previous confrontations, held a single manila envelope. Nothing else. No folders this time, no stacks of evidence. Just one envelope sealed, waiting. At 9:50, Rachel's car pulled into the driveway. She sat there for a moment, engine running, probably gathering courage or rehearsing explanations or doing whatever it is people do when they know they're walking into something but don't know what. Finally, the engine cut off. The car door opened. She walked toward the house carrying a single empty bus like she was hoping this would be quick. I opened the door before she could knock. James? She looked better than she had at our last meeting. Hair styled, makeup applied, wearing clothes that fit properly instead of the grief-stricken casualness of before. She looked like someone who'd started to move on. Thank you for letting me come by. You still have keys. You don't need permission to enter your own house. I stepped aside to let her pass. Though I suppose it's not really yours anymore, is it? She flinched but said nothing, just walked past me into the living room and set down her box. I'll try to be quick. I know this is hard for both of us. Is it hard for both of us? I gestured toward the dining room. Come sit down first, before you start packing. James, I really just want to get my things and... Sit down, Rachel. The steel in my voice made her obey. We walked to the dining room together, this house we'd shared becoming a museum of our ending. She saw the envelope on the table, looked at it with obvious wariness. What's that? That's why I asked you to bring your birth control pills. Did you bring them? She pulled a small pharmacy bag from her purse, set it on the table next to the envelope. I don't understand what this is about. I sat down across from her, the table between us for what I knew would be the last time. How long have you been taking those pills, Rachel? What? Why does that matter? Humor me. How long? She frowned, calculating. 5 years? Maybe 6? Since we decided to start trying for kids and my doctor recommended I regulate my cycle first. And you've been taking them consistently? Of course. Every day, same time. You know that you're the one who's been asking me about getting pregnant for the past year. Her voice took on a defensive edge. Why are we talking about this? I reached across the table and took the pharmacy bag, pulled out the pill packet, examined it slowly, deliberately. These are from Dr. Morrison's office, right? Your gynecologist? Yes, James. What? And she prescribed these to help regulate your cycle so we could conceive? Yes. Rachel was getting agitated now, her fingers drumming against the table. We've been over this 100 times. My hormones were irregular. The pills were supposed to help, but we were having trouble anyway, which is why we were considering fertility treatments. What does this have to do with anything? I set the pills down and slid the envelope across to her. Open it. She stared at the envelope like it might explode. What's in here? The truth, the last piece you don't know that I know. Open it. With shaking hands, she unsealed the envelope and pulled out the contents. Medical records, pharmacy receipts, email exchanges. She stared at the first page, and I watched understanding dawn slowly across her face. Watched the color drain from her cheeks as she realized what she was looking at. Where did you get these? Her voice was barely a whisper. I requested copies of your medical records. I'm still listed as your spouse and your emergency contact, which means I have legal access to your healthcare information. HIPAA is complicated that way. You can't hide medical information from a spouse who knows where to look. I leaned back in my chair. Those pills you've been taking? They're not to regulate your cycle, Rachel. They're standard oral contraceptives. Birth control, the kind that prevents pregnancy, the kind that makes it impossible to conceive. She was shaking her head, papers trembling in her hands. No, Dr. Morrison said these would help us get pregnant. She said, Dr. Morrison prescribed them 5 years ago as birth control. You told me she prescribed them to regulate your cycle. That was the first lie. I pointed to the next page in the stack. This is an email exchange between you and Dr. Morrison from 3 months ago. You asked her to continue the prescription. She reminded you that if you were still trying to conceive, you should stop taking them. You told her you'd think about it, but you didn't stop, did you? Rachel was openly crying now, tears streaming down her face, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret. Just the cold satisfaction of watching the last lie crumble. This is an invoice from a pharmacy dated 2 weeks ago, while you were in the Bahamas with Marcus. You had your prescription refilled and shipped to his apartment. Not ours, his. Because you didn't want me to see it. To ask questions about why you were still taking pills that were supposed to help us get pregnant, but were actually preventing it. James, please. For a year, Rachel, for an entire year, I thought we were trying to have a baby. I went to fertility appointments. I changed my diet, stopped drinking, took vitamins, did everything the doctors suggested to improve our chances. I held you while you cried about negative pregnancy tests. I reassured you that it would happen, that we just needed to be patient. And the entire fucking time, you were taking pills specifically designed to make sure it never happened. She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I was gonna stop. I was planning to stop. You just what? Needed to make sure you didn't accidentally get pregnant by your husband while you were sleeping with someone else? The words came out like acid. Or were you hoping to get pregnant by Marcus and pass it off as mine? Is that what the Bahamas trip was about? A 2-week window to conceive with him while I was here taking fertility supplements like an idiot? No, God, no, James, it wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain to me why you would let me believe we were struggling with infertility when you were actively preventing conception. Explain why you would put me through the emotional torture of thinking I might be the problem, that maybe we'd never have the family we both said we wanted. Explain why you would lie about something so fundamental, so intimate, so... I had to stop, had to breathe, had to resist the urge to scream. Explain it to me, Rachel. She was gulping air between sobs, trying to form words. I wasn't ready. I thought I was when we first started talking about it. But then when it became real, when it became something that was actually going to happen, I panicked. I realized I didn't want a baby. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I knew you wanted one, and I didn't know how to tell you that I'd changed my mind. So instead of talking to me, instead of having an honest conversation about our future, you just lied. You let me think we had fertility problems. You went to doctor's appointments and nodded along while they discussed treatments, all while taking pills that made those treatments impossible. I know how it sounds. It sounds like you're a liar, Rachel. Not just about the affair, not just about Marcus, but about everything. Our entire marriage, our plans, our future, all of it was built on lies you told because you were too much of a coward to be honest about what you actually wanted. She wiped her face with shaking hands, leaving mascara streaks across her cheeks. What do you want me to say? I'm sorry, I've said that. I've apologized for everything. I want you to tell me the truth. For once, the actual, complete truth. I leaned forward. Did you ever want children with me? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I don't know, she finally whispered. I thought I did. When we got married, when we were young and everything felt possible? Yes, I wanted kids. I wanted the whole thing. Spam my orange too. House, family, white picket fence. But somewhere along the way, I changed. I realized I liked our life the way it was. Liked having freedom and flexibility and not being tied down. And I didn't know how to tell you that without me leaving you? She nodded miserably. So you lied. You strung me along for years. Let me believe we were building towards something that you had no intention of actually doing. And when that lie got too complicated, when I started pushing for fertility treatments, you started an affair. Because it's easier to blow everything up than to have a difficult conversation. It wasn't calculated like that. It wasn't a plan. Of course it was a plan. Maybe not consciously, maybe not sitting down with a checklist, but your actions reveal intent, Rachel. You kept taking birth control while claiming to want a baby. That's deception. You pursued Marcus while acting like a devoted wife. That's betrayal. You booked a vacation with your lover using money we saved for our child's future. That's theft. Every single choice you made was designed to serve your desires while hiding them from me. I pulled another document from the envelope, one I'd been saving for this exact moment. This is a text message exchange between you and your sister from last April. You told her you weren't sure you wanted kids anymore. She asked if you'd talk to me about it. You said no, that you'd deal with it later. And when she suggested you should be honest with me, you said, I read directly from the screenshot. You said James would freak out. He's wanted kids since before we got married. It's easier to just keep pretending and figure it out eventually. Rachel stared at the message like she was seeing a ghost. You hacked my phone? I recovered deleted messages from our shared cloud backup, which you would know if you'd bothered to read the privacy settings. But that's not the point. The point is that you knew for at least 6 months, probably longer, that you didn't want what I wanted. And instead of being honest, instead of giving me the chance to decide if I wanted to stay in a marriage that would never include children, you just kept lying. Because I love you, she was shouting now, desperate. Because I didn't want to lose you, and I knew if I told you the truth, you'd leave. So I kept hoping I'd change my mind, that maybe I would wake up one day and want a baby as much as you did. But you didn't change your mind. You started sleeping with someone else instead. Those things aren't connected. Of course they're connected. You were trapped in a marriage where you'd lied about something fundamental, something you couldn't keep hiding forever. So you found an exit strategy. You started an affair, knowing it would eventually be discovered, knowing it would end things in a way that made me the injured party instead of you, the person who didn't want kids. You get to be the cheater who made a mistake instead of the wife who deliberately deceived her husband about their entire future. She shook her head violently. No, I didn't plan it like that. I didn't start things with Marcus to end our marriage. It just happened and it felt good and You what? You didn't think about the consequences? You didn't consider that actions have meanings? I stood up, too agitated to sit anymore. Here's what I think happened, Rachel. I think you realized years ago that you'd sold me a version of our future that you didn't actually want. I think you knew you couldn't maintain that lie forever. And I think when Marcus showed interest, when he offered you attention and excitement in a way out, you took it. Not because you love him, though maybe you do, I don't know, but because he represented escape from a truth you didn't want to tell. You're wrong, but her voice had no conviction. What am I? Then explain the timeline. Explain why your affair started within weeks of us beginning fertility treatments. Explain why you refilled your birth control prescription the same week we met with a reproductive endocrinologist. Explain why every step I took toward the family we supposedly both wanted, you took a corresponding step towards someone else. She had no answer, just sat there surrounded by evidence of her betrayals, plural, looking smaller and more lost than I'd ever seen her. I didn't marry Marcus to have kids, she said finally. I married you, for us. Why wasn't that enough? Because people change, Rachel. People want different things as they grow older. And when that happens, when you realize your goals don't align anymore, you talk about it. You don't lie about it. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. If you told me 5 years ago that you didn't want children, I would have been disappointed. I'll be honest about that. But we could have talked it through, maybe found a compromise, or maybe decided we wanted different futures and parted as friends. Instead, you lied for 5 years, wasted a year of my life on fake fertility struggles, and had an affair that destroyed any possibility of us ending things amicably. What do you want from me? She was pleading now. You want me to say I'm a terrible person? Fine. I'm terrible. I'm a liar and a cheater, and I ruined everything good we had. Is that what you need to hear? I need you to understand that this isn't just about the affair. It's about the fundamental dishonesty that made the affair possible. You've been lying to me about who you are and what you want for most of our marriage. Marcus is just the most visible symptom of a much deeper disease. I pulled one more document from the envelope, the last one. This is an amendment to our divorce agreement. In addition to the 50-50 asset split, I'm requesting reimbursement for all fertility-related expenses from the past year. Doctor's visits, medications, treatments, everything we spent trying to conceive a child that you were actively preventing. It comes to about $12,000. She stared at the paper. You're billing me for trying to have a baby? I'm billing you for lying about trying to have a baby. There's a difference. She laughed, a broken sound. This is insane. This is vindictive and petty and it's fair, I interrupted. You used our joint funds to pursue an affair. I'm asking you to reimburse me for funds I spent based on your lies. If you think that's unreasonable, we can let a judge decide. I'm sure they'll be very interested in hearing about how you defrauded your husband regarding fertility treatments while conducting an extramarital affair. She looked at me with something like hatred. You've really thought of everything, haven't you? Every angle, every punishment, every way to make me suffer. I've thought about the truth and the cost of hiding it. I stood up again, walked to the window, looked out at the fog-shrouded street. You can pack your things now. Take whatever you want. Furniture, photos, kitchen stuff. I don't care. I'll have my lawyer send over the amended agreement. You have a week to review it before I file. And if I don't sign, then we go to court. I present all of this to a judge. The affair, the lantas, the birth control, deception, all of it. And I let them decide how to divide our assets. But I promise you, Rachel, it won't be 50-50, not when fraud is involved. She gathered up the papers with shaking hands, stuffed them back into the envelope. I came here to pick up my things, not to be ambushed with. You ambushed me with 6 months of betrayal. I ambushed you with 1 morning of truth. I think I'm being generous with the ratio. She stood, grabbed her purse, started toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. For what it's worth, I really did think I'd changed my mind about wanting kids. I really did think that maybe if we kept trying, I'd wake up one day and feel ready. I didn't set out to deceive you. But you did deceive me, and when you realized the deception was getting harder to maintain, you found someone else instead of finding honesty. That's the part you don't seem to understand, Rachel. The affair isn't the worst thing you did. The worst thing you did was trap me in a marriage built on lies and then blame me for not seeing through them. She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and walked upstairs. I heard her moving through our bedroom, opening closets, dragging boxes across the floor. The sounds of a life being dismantled, one possession at a time. I sat back down at the dining room table and looked at the birth control pills she'd left behind. 28 small pills in a wheel, each one a day of deception, each one a choice to prioritize her comfort over our truth. An hour later, she came back downstairs with 3 boxes stacked precariously in her arms. I'll need to come back for the rest. There's too much for one trip. That's fine, just let me know when. I'll make sure I'm not here. She paused at the door, boxes balanced against her hip. Do you hate me? I considered the question. Thought about the woman I'd married 12 years ago, the promises we'd made, the life we'd built. Thought about the stranger she'd become, or maybe always was, hidden behind a performance of domesticity. No, I said finally. I don't hate you, Rachel. I hate what you did. I hate the lies and the betrayal and the cowardice. But you're just someone I used to know. Someone I thought I'd spend my life with. Someone who turned out to be completely different than I believed. Tears tracked down her face again. I never meant to hurt you. That's the tragedy of it. I actually believe that. I think you made 1,000 small choices without considering their cumulative impact. You lied without planning to lie. You cheated without meaning to cheat. You destroyed our marriage while thinking you were just managing it. I walked to the door, opened it for her. But intent doesn't erase impact. And the impact is that we're done, completely, irrevocably done. She walked out into the fog, loaded her boxes into her car, drove away. I watched her taillights disappear into the gray November morning, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief, not even relief, just emptiness. Just the hollow echo of an ending that had been coming for longer than I'd realized. I went back inside, locked the door, and looked around at our house. Half-empty closets, gaps in the bookshelves, spaces where furniture used to be. A museum of subtraction, everything defined by what was missing rather than what remained. My phone buzzed. A text from David. How'd it go? I looked at the birth control pills still sitting on the dining room table, at the empty envelope, at the evidence of the last great lie. It went, I typed back, phase 3 complete. Because there was still one more phase, one more revelation, one more truth that needed to come to light before this could really, truly be over. But not today. Today was for sitting in the silence of an empty house, for processing the magnitude of deception, for beginning the long, slow work of figuring out who I was when I wasn't someone's husband anymore. Tomorrow I would start the final phase. Tomorrow I would take all this evidence, all this truth, all these carefully documented lies, and I would make sure the record was clear. Not for revenge, though I wouldn't pretend that wasn't part of it, but for clarity, for the future, for anyone who asked what happened to James and Rachel's marriage, so they'd know the real story instead of the sanitized version she'd inevitably tell. But for now, I just sat in the dining room of my half-empty house, in the fog-wrapped silence of a Saturday morning, and I let myself feel the full weight of what I'd lost and what I'd learned. The woman I'd loved had never really existed. The marriage I'd believed in had been built on lies. The future I'd planned would never happen. But at least now I knew. At least now the truth was out, sharp and clean and undeniable. And that, I told myself, had to be worth something. It had to be. The fog lifted by afternoon, leaving everything sharp-edged and too bright. I spent the rest of Saturday doing the mindless work of reorganization, moving furniture to fill the gaps Rachel had left, rearranging books on shelves, trying to make the house look less like a crime scene and more like a home that belonged to one person instead of two. Around 3, my phone started buzzing. Text messages, rapid fire, from numbers both familiar and forgotten. From Sarah, Rachel's coworker. "Hey James, I just heard. I'm so sorry. If you need anything." From Mike, my college roommate hadn't talked to in months. "Dude, what the hell? Rachel said you guys are splitting up?" From Rachel's mother, "James, honey, Rachel told us what's been happening. We need to talk." I stared at the messages, watched them multiply, 5, 7, 10, and realized what was happening. Rachel was telling people, spinning her narrative, getting ahead of the truth, shaping the story before I could. I opened Rachel's mother's text thread and typed, "Happy to talk. When works for you?" The response came immediately. "Can you come for dinner tomorrow, 5 p.m.? I'll be there." I spent the rest of the evening watching my phone light up with concerned messages, sympathetic emojis, offers of support that felt hollow because nobody actually knew what they were supporting me through. They knew Rachel's version, whatever sanitized story she'd crafted about our marriage falling apart, about mutual incompatibility, about nobody being at fault. Nobody knew about Marcus, about the Bahamas, about 6 months of calculated deception, about birth control pills disguised as fertility treatments. Nobody knew the truth except me, Marcus, Rachel, and David. And tomorrow, I would start changing that. Sunday evening, I arrived at Rachel's parents' house at exactly 5 o'clock. The Tudor-style home in the suburbs where Rachel had grown up, where we'd had countless family dinners, where I'd asked her father for permission to marry her 12 years ago. I'd always felt welcome here, had thought of Richard and Patricia as second parents, had imagined our future children running through this same backyard. Now it just felt like enemy territory. Patricia answered the door with a tight smile and arms that wanted to hug but held back. "James, thank you for coming." "Of course." I stepped inside, smelled pot roast and disappointment. "Thanks for having me." Richard appeared from the living room, looking older than I remembered. His face creased with the particular exhaustion of parents watching their child's marriage collapse. "James, come in, sit down. Can I get you a drink?" "Water's fine." We settled in the living room, me on the couch, them in matching armchairs, the coffee table between us like a negotiation table. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Patricia finally spoke. "Rachel told us you're filing for divorce." "That's correct." She said, Patricia glanced at her husband, drew strength from him. "She said you've been having problems for a while, that you'd grown apart, that you both decided it was best to end things before they got worse." I nodded slowly. "Is that what she said?" "Yes, and we want you to know, James, that we don't blame you. These things happen. Sometimes people change. Sometimes marriages don't work out. And Patricia," I set down the water glass I hadn't drunk from. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but that's not what happened." She blinked. "I'm sorry?" Rachel and I didn't mutually decide to end our marriage. Rachel had a 6-month affair with a coworker named Marcus Chen. When I discovered it and confronted her with evidence, she signed divorce papers. That's what happened. The silence that followed was absolute. Patricia's face went white. Richard's jaw clenched so hard I could hear his teeth grind. "That's not," Patricia started. Rachel said there was no one else. She said you were both just unhappy. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo album I'd prepared for exactly this conversation. I'm going to show you something, and I need you to understand that I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing it because you deserve to know the truth. I handed Patricia the phone. On the screen was the photo Marcus had accidentally sent. Rachel and him at the beachside restaurant, her hand on his arm, both of them looking like a couple. Patricia stared at it, her hand trembling. This was taken 2 weeks ago in the Bahamas, while Rachel told us she was at a work conference in Orlando. I swiped to the next photo. This is them at the resort pool, and this is a hotel room key card charged to Marcus's credit card for a 2-week stay. Patricia passed the phone to Richard with shaking hands. He looked at each photo with the methodical care of someone cataloging evidence, his face getting redder with each swipe. "How long have you known?" he asked finally. "I found out the day she got back from the trip. I'd suspected for a few weeks before that, but the accidental photo confirmed everything." "And what? You confronted her? She admitted it?" "Eventually, after I asked her one question that made her panic and run to a doctor's office, after I laid out 6 months of evidence, yes, she admitted everything." Patricia was crying now, quiet tears that spoke to deeper grief than just a failed marriage. "I don't understand. Rachel's not, we raised her better than this." "I thought I knew her too," I said gently. "Turns out we were both wrong about who she really is." Richard set down the phone like it burned him. "Does Marcus work at her company?" "Yes, they've been colleagues for years. Friends first, then something more." I'll call her boss. This is workplace misconduct. They can't just..." "Richard, that's your choice, but I need you to know something else first." I took a breath. "The affair isn't the only thing Rachel lied about." I told them about the birth control, about the year of fake fertility struggles, the treatments I'd undergone, the emotional torture of thinking we might never have children while she was actively preventing conception. I watched Patricia's face crumple as she understood the depth of her daughter's deception. "She told us you were both trying so hard," Patricia whispered. "She cried on my shoulder about negative pregnancy tests. I thought she wanted a baby as much as you did." "So did I. Turns out we were both part of the same performance." Richard stood up abruptly, walked to the window, stood there with his back to us. His shoulders were shaking. "I need to call her. She needs to explain this. She won't be able to explain it in a way that makes sense. I've tried." I stood too, ready to leave now that the truth was out. "I know this is painful. I know you love your daughter and want to believe the best of her. But you asked me here to talk, and talking means telling you the truth, even when it's ugly." Patricia stood, hugged me with desperate strength. "I'm so sorry, James. I'm so sorry. If she'd told us..." "You would have told her to be honest with me. I know. But she didn't tell you because she knew what you'd say." I gently extracted myself from the hug. "I should go. This is a family matter now, and I'm not family anymore." "You'll always be family to us," Patricia said fiercely. "What Rachel did, that doesn't change how we feel about you. But it did change things, and we all knew it. The divorce would divide more than just assets. It would divide relationships, holidays, mutual friends. I would lose not just a wife, but a whole extended network of people I'd considered family." Richard walked me to the door, his face still red, his hands clenched into fists. "I'll talk to her. Make her understand what she's done, what she's thrown away. Don't do it for me. Do it because she needs to hear it from people who love her unconditionally. She needs to understand that love doesn't mean enabling lies." He gripped my shoulder. "You're a better man than I would be in your situation. I'm just trying to survive it with my integrity intact." I drove home through darkening streets, past houses lit with Sunday evening warmth, past families having normal dinners and normal conversations about normal problems. My phone started buzzing before I was halfway home. Rachel calling over and over, probably being confronted by her parents, probably panicking that her narrative was falling apart. I didn't answer. Let her panic. Let her explain herself to the people who raised her, who taught her right from wrong, who were now learning that she'd chosen wrong over and over again. When I got home, there were 7 missed calls from Rachel and 1 text. How could you tell them? They're my parents. I texted back, they asked for the truth. I gave it to them. That's what honesty looks like. Then I turned off my phone and sat in my living room, in my half-empty house, and I waited. Because this was just the beginning. Tomorrow I would talk to our mutual friends. Tuesday I would contact our extended families. By the end of the week, everyone who mattered would know the real story. Not Rachel's sanitized version, but the documented evidence truth. Not for revenge, for the record. So that when this was all over, when the divorce was final and the property divided and the last boxes moved, nobody would be able to say they didn't know what really happened. The truth was out now, spreading like light through fleas, burning off the comfortable lies people had been telling themselves about our marriage. And I was done protecting Rachel from the consequences of her choices, done enabling her deceptions by staying silent, done being the good guy who takes the high road while she rewrites history from the low one. My phone buzzed, a text from David. Rachel's mother called me, said you told them everything. You okay? I'm fine, I typed back, just tired of lying by omission. What's next? I looked around my living room at the space Rachel used to occupy, at the life we used to share. Next, I wrote, I tell everyone else. And then, finally, I could start moving forward. Monday morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Word was spreading faster than I'd anticipated, the truth moving through our social network like a virus, infecting every shared friendship and mutual acquaintance. From Rachel, please stop telling people you're ruining my life. From Marcus, we need to talk. This is getting out of hand. From my mother, your father and I are on our way over. Don't make any decisions until we get there. From Sarah, Rachel's coworker, is it true about Marcus? Everyone at the office is talking about it. I made coffee and started responding, methodically, honestly, letting the truth continue its spread. To Rachel, I'm not ruining your life. I'm telling the truth about what you did. There's a difference. To Marcus, there's nothing to talk about. You wanted my wife, you got her. Congratulations. To my mother, I'm fine, come whenever. Door's unlocked. To Sarah, it's true, 6 months. Ask HR to check the security footage from the parking garage if you want dates. The last one was calculated. Sarah was the office gossip, the woman who knew everyone's business and shared it with editorial flair. If I wanted the truth to spread through Rachel's workplace, Sarah was the vector. My parents arrived at 8, my mother sweeping in with a casserole and concern. My father with the quiet anger of a man whose son had been wronged. We sat at the kitchen table, my mother holding my hand, my father reading through the evidence folder with increasing fury, and I told them everything. That son of a bitch, my father said when I got to the part about Marcus. Give me his address. Dad, no, this isn't that kind of situation. The hell it isn't. He slept with your wife. That's exactly the kind of situation that requires legal resolution, not violence. I squeezed my mother's hand. I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm handling this the right way. My mother was crying, quiet tears that matched Patricia's from the night before. How are you so calm about this? If your father did something like this to me, I'm not calm. I'm focused. There's a difference. I pulled my hand back, wrapped it around my coffee mug instead. If I let myself feel everything right now, all the anger and hurt and betrayal, I'll fall apart. So I'm compartmentalizing, dealing with the practical aspects first, emotions later. That's not healthy, honey. Neither is staying in a marriage built on lies. I'm doing the best I can. They stayed for 2 hours, my mother reorganizing my kitchen cabinets because she needed something to do with her hands, my father making a list of lawyers I should consult and assets I should protect. Normal parent things, comforting in their mundanity. When they left, my father pulled me aside. You know we're proud of you, right? For handling this with dignity. A lot of men would have done something stupid by now. I still might, I said honestly. Ask me again in a month. He gripped my shoulder, that universal gesture of male affection, then left. I watched them drive away and felt the first real crack in my composure. Seeing their pain, their anger on my behalf, their helpless desire to fix something that was irreparably broken, it made it all more real somehow. I went back inside and checked my phone. More messages, more people finding out, expressing shock, offering support, asking questions. From Tom, our couple friend from book club. Dude, I had no idea. Rachel seemed so normal last Tuesday. From Amanda, Tom's wife. I'm so sorry, James. Do you want to come to dinner this week? From Rachel's cousin Jennifer. My mom told me what happened. I can't believe Rachel would do this. I'm so sorry. One by one, I watched our social network realign. People choosing sides, making judgments, deciding who to believe. And because I had evidence, documented, undeniable evidence, most of them were choosing me. It should have felt validating. Instead, it just felt exhausting. Around noon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. James Rothstein? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. Speaking. This is Jennifer Ward from Cascade Tech. I'm the HR director. I understand you have some information relevant to an internal investigation we're conducting. My heart rate picked up. What kind of investigation? I can't discuss details over the phone, but I'd like to meet with you this week if you're available. Bring any documentation you feel comfortable sharing. This is about Rachel and Marcus. A pause. I can neither confirm nor deny that, but yes, your information would be helpful. We scheduled a meeting for Wednesday. After hanging up, I sat with the implications. Sarah had worked fast, or maybe someone else had reported it. Either way, Rachel and Marcus's affair was now an official workplace matter. I should have felt satisfaction. Instead, I felt tired. My phone buzzed again. This time, Rachel. HR called me in for a meeting. What did you do? I stared at the message for a long moment before responding. I didn't do anything. I answered someone's question honestly. What happens next is a consequence of your choices, not my honesty. You're trying to get me fired. I'm trying to get divorced. If your affair violates company policy, that's between you and Cascade Tech. You're vindictive and cruel, and I can't believe I ever loved you. I read that last message 3 times, felt each word like a small knife. Then I typed, I loved you too, past tense. And the cruelty isn't in telling the truth, it's in making the truth necessary. I blocked her number after that, let her communicate through lawyers from now on. I was done being her emotional punching bag, done accepting abuse from someone who'd violated every promise she'd made to me. The afternoon brought more calls, friends of friends, Rachel's coworkers asking for clarification, my boss checking in to make sure I was okay. A steady stream of people wanting to know what happened, wanting to express sympathy, wanting to be part of the drama. I answered them all with the same calm recitation of facts. No embellishment, no editorial, just the documented truth, over and over, until it stopped sounding like my life and started sounding like a police report. By evening, I was done. Emotionally depleted, I turned off my phone, made myself dinner I didn't eat, and sat in front of the TV without turning it on. David showed up at 7 with beer and pizza and the gift of not asking how I was doing. Your mom called me, he said, settling onto my couch like he'd done 1,000 times before. Said you might need company. I'm fine. You're not fine, but you will be, eventually. He handed me a beer. Eat something, you look like shit. I took a bite of pizza, tasted cardboard. Rachel's HR called. They want to meet with me. You going? Wednesday. You know they could fire both of them, right? Workplace relationships are complicated legally, but if they were using company time or resources, I know. And you're okay with that? Rachel losing her job? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't want her to suffer. I don't want her life to be ruined, but I also can't protect her from the consequences of her choices anymore. If telling the truth means she faces professional repercussions, that's just what happens. David nodded slowly. You're handling this better than I would. No, I'm not. I'm just handling it differently. We sat in comfortable silence, eating pizza and drinking beer, the TV still dark, the house still half empty. It felt normal. It felt okay. It felt like maybe I would survive this after all. People are taking sides, David said eventually. Amanda and Tom invited you to dinner but didn't mention Rachel. Sarah stopped following Rachel on Instagram. Even the book club is splitting. Team James versus Team Rachel. There shouldn't be teams. This isn't a sport. It's human nature. People need to categorize things, decide who to support. And right now, with the evidence you've provided, most people are categorizing you as the victim and Rachel as the villain. She's not a villain. She's just, I stopped, tried to find the right words. She's just someone who made a lot of bad choices and is now facing the consequences. That's very mature of you. Fuck maturity. I'm angry and hurt and betrayed, but I'm also trying not to become someone I don't recognize, trying not to let this turn me bitter or vindictive or cruel. Is that why you told everyone? To preserve your integrity? I told everyone because they deserved the truth, because I was tired of Rachel controlling the narrative, because I stopped, felt emotion rising in my throat, because I needed people to know that I tried, that I was faithful and honest and did everything I was supposed to do, that when our marriage failed, it wasn't because I didn't fight for it. David didn't say anything, just sat with me in the silence, let me feel what I needed to feel without trying to fix it. You know what the worst part is? I said finally. I still love her, not the person she is, the person I thought she was, and I'm grieving someone who never really existed. How fucked up is that? Pretty fucked up, but also pretty normal. David grabbed another slice of pizza. You're mourning the death of your marriage and the death of your understanding of your wife. That's two losses at once. Give yourself permission to feel shitty about it. I don't have time to feel shitty. I have to meet with HR Wednesday, sign divorce papers Thursday, figure out how to divide a life by Friday. Then feel shitty next week. Schedule it. Put it in your calendar. Tuesday, 2 p.m., fall apart completely. Wednesday, 2 p.m., put yourself back together. I almost smiled at that. You think it works that way? No, but you're going to try anyway because that's who you are. You're going to compartmentalize and schedule and organize your way through grief because the alternative is chaos and you hate chaos. He was right. He knew me better than I knew myself sometimes. We finished the pizza and the beers and watched a game neither of us cared about. And for a few hours, I felt almost normal. Almost okay. Almost like a person instead of a collection of wounds held together by spite and stubbornness. When David left at 11, he hugged me at the door. Call me if you need anything, and I mean anything. Company, conversation, help burying a body, whatever. I'll be fine. I know you will, but you don't have to be fine alone. After he left, I locked the door and walked through my empty house one more time, checked the locks on windows, turned off lights, did all the small rituals of ending a day. In the bathroom, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. I looked older, tired, like someone who'd aged years and weeks. But I also looked different in a way I couldn't quite name. Harder, maybe, or clearer, like grief had burned away some softness I'd been carrying, leaving something more essential behind. I went to bed and actually slept. 6 hours of dreamless unconsciousness that felt like mercy. And when I woke Tuesday morning to more messages, more questions, more people wanting to know the story, I answered them all with the same methodical honesty. Because this was what I'd chosen. This path of radical truth-telling, of refusing to let Rachel's lies stand unchallenged. And if it made me look vindictive or cruel or unforgiving, so be it. At least I could look at myself in the mirror and know I'd told the truth. At least I could live with who I was becoming. At least I could sleep at night. That had to be worth something. Wednesday morning arrived cold and bright, the kind of November day that makes everything look crisp and unforgiving. I dressed in my best suit, the charcoal one I'd worn to job interviews and funerals, occasions that required gravitas, and drove to Cascade Tech's headquarters downtown. The building was all glass and steel, aggressively modern, the kind of place that probably had a meditation room and kombucha on tap. I'd been here before, to company parties where Rachel had introduced me to colleagues whose names I forgot immediately, where Marcus had shaken my hand and smiled and looked me in the eye while planning to betray me. Security directed me to the 14th floor. Jennifer Ward's office overlooked the city, floor-to-ceiling windows that made everything feel exposed. She stood when I entered, mid-40s, professional suit, the kind of face that gave nothing away. "Mr. Rothstein, thank you for coming." She gestured to a chair across from her desk. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." She sat, folded her hands on the desk between us, and got straight to it. "I'll be direct. We've received reports of an inappropriate relationship between two of our employees. Based on the information we've gathered so far, your name has come up as someone who might have relevant knowledge. Before we proceed, I need to clarify, you are under no legal obligation to speak with me. This is entirely voluntary." "I understand. And anything you tell me will be used in our internal investigation and could result in disciplinary action against the employees involved. Are you comfortable with that?" I thought about Rachel, about the job she'd worked so hard for, the career she'd built. Thought about what losing it would mean for her future, for whatever life she was planning with Marcus. Then I thought about the lies, the betrayal, the year of fake fertility treatments, the 2 weeks in the Bahamas paid for with our savings. "I'm comfortable with that," I said. Jennifer pulled out a legal pad. "Walk me through what you know." I did. I told her about discovering the affair, about the phone records and text messages, about the Bahamas trip that Rachel had claimed was a work conference. I told her about Marcus, about how long they'd been colleagues, about the progression from friendship to something more. "Do you have documentation?" Jennifer asked. I pulled out a flash drive I'd prepared specifically for this meeting. "This contains phone records, text messages, credit card receipts, hotel reservations, and security camera footage from your parking garage showing Rachel and Marcus leaving together on multiple occasions when they'd both supposedly worked late." She took the drive, turned it over in her hands. "Security camera footage. How did you obtain that?" "I didn't. A friend who works in building security did. He's prepared to testify if necessary." That was a lie. I'd paid a security contractor $200 to pull the footage, and he'd made it very clear he wouldn't testify to anything. But Jennifer didn't need to know that. She plugged in the drive, opened the files, her face remaining professionally neutral as she scanned through evidence. "This is quite thorough." "I had a lot of time to be thorough." She looked up from the screen. "Mr. Rothstein, I need to ask you something directly. What's your goal here? Are you seeking revenge against your wife and against these employees? Or are you genuinely concerned about company policy violations?" I considered the question. The honest answer was complicated. It was both revenge and principle, hurt and justice, personal pain and legitimate concern about workplace ethics. "My wife had an affair," I said slowly. "That's personal, and it's painful, and yes, I'm angry about it. But she also used company resources to conduct that affair. She claimed work trips that were actually vacations. She used office time for personal communications. She and Marcus created a situation where their colleagues had to cover for them, had to lie about their whereabouts, had to be complicit in something that violated your company's ethics policy." I leaned forward. "So yes, this is personal, but it's also a legitimate workplace issue, and I think your other employees deserve to work in an environment where people follow the rules, where married colleagues don't use company time and resources to conduct affairs, where professional boundaries actually mean something." Jennifer studied me for a long moment. "You're very articulate for someone in your situation." I've had time to think about how to articulate it. She turned back to her computer, clicked through more files. "This footage from the parking garage, when was this taken?" "Multiple dates from July through October. The timestamps are in the file names. And these hotel receipts, they show charges to Marcus Chen's personal credit card, but some of them are from afternoons when both employees were supposedly at client meetings." "Yes." "Did you verify with the clients whether those meetings actually happened?" "No, that felt like overstepping, but I'm sure your records show whether they billed those hours as client work." She made a note on her legal pad. "They did. We've already pulled their timesheets." Something in her tone told me Rachel and Marcus were in deeper trouble than they knew. Billing personal time as client work wasn't just an ethics violation, it was fraud. Is there anything else you can tell me that might be relevant to our investigation? I thought about the birth control deception, about the fertility treatments, about all the personal betrayals that had nothing to do with Cascade Tech's policies. No, everything else is private between Rachel and me. I appreciate your discretion. She ejected the flash drive, slid it back across the desk. Keep this. We've copied everything we need. And Mr. Rothstein, for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're going through this. Workplace affairs create victims beyond just the spouses involved. They damage team dynamics, create liability for the company, and force colleagues into uncomfortable positions. I appreciate that. We'll be conducting our investigation over the next 2 weeks. I can't tell you what the outcome will be, but I can tell you we take these matters seriously. If employees violate our ethics policy, especially if they commit timesheet fraud, there are consequences. I stood to leave, shook her hand. Thank you for your time. Mr. Rothstein? She walked me to the door. I've been doing this job for 15 years. I've seen a lot of workplace affairs. Most of the betrayed spouses who come in here are angry, vengeful, looking to cause maximum damage. You're not like that. I'm angry, I said honestly. I'm very angry, but I'm trying to channel it into something constructive instead of destructive. Well, you're doing a remarkable job. I hope you find peace with all of this. I rode the elevator down 14 floors, walked through the lobby past employees who might have known about Rachel and Marcus, who might have covered for them, who might have watched my marriage dissolve in real time while pretending ignorance. Outside, the November air felt sharp and clean. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, letting it clear my head, trying to process what I'd just done. I'd potentially cost Rachel her job, her career, the financial independence she'd fought so hard for. I waited to feel guilty, waited for remorse to hit me, for second thoughts to creep in. But all I felt was tired, and maybe underneath that, the smallest flicker of satisfaction. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. We need to talk. Now, meet me at the coffee shop on 5th. I stared at the message, debated ignoring it, then decided why not. One more conversation, one more chance to hear him try to explain the inexplicable. I texted back. 30 minutes. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with the 2 cups of coffee going cold in front of him. He looked terrible, unshaven, rumpled, like he'd slept in his car. His leg was bouncing under the table, nervous energy radiating off him in waves. Thanks for coming, he said as I sat down. You have 20 minutes. Talk. HR called me in yesterday, asked me questions about Rachel, about our relationship, about work trips and client billing. They're investigating us, James. They're looking at timesheet records and expense reports, and he ran his hands through his hair. Did you talk to them? I answered their questions honestly. You gave them evidence. Security footage, credit card receipts. You're trying to get us fired. I'm trying to get divorced. What your employer does with information about your ethics violations is their choice, not mine. Ethics violations. He laughed bitterly. That's what you're calling it? We fell in love, James. That's not a violation. You fell in love on company time. You billed personal hours as client work. You used office resources to conduct an affair. That's not romance, Marcus. That's fraud. He slumped in his chair. Rachel's going to lose her job. They basically told her that yesterday, and I'll probably lose mine too. We'll both be blacklisted in the industry, unable to get references, starting over from nothing. Consequences, I said simply. For what? For being human? For making mistakes? For lying, for stealing company time, for creating a hostile work environment where your colleagues had to cover for you. I leaned forward. You want to know what really bothers me about this, Marcus? Not that you fell in love with my wife. Feelings happen, I get that. What bothers me is how entitled you both are, how you act like the rules don't apply to you, like you should be able to conduct an affair on your employer's dime and face no consequences because your feelings are special. That's not It is fair. You made choices, adult choices. Now you get adult consequences. That's how the world works. He stared at his coffee, and I watched him realize that charm wouldn't work here, that I wasn't someone he could sweet talk or manipulate. What do you want from me, James? An apology? I already gave you one. Groveling. I'll do it if that's what it takes. I don't want anything from you. I wanted the truth, which I got. I wanted the affair documented, which it is. I wanted to make sure everyone knew what really happened, and now they do. There's nothing else you have that I need. Rachel said you're destroying her life out of spite. Rachel destroyed her own life. I'm just refusing to help her hide the wreckage. I stood up. Your 20 minutes are up. Don't contact me again. Wait. He grabbed my arm, and I looked down at his hand until he released it. Just one thing. The question you asked her about me having an illness. There really isn't one, is there? No, so why? Because I wanted her to feel afraid. I wanted her to panic, to run to a doctor, to sit in a waiting room imagining worst-case scenarios. I wanted her to experience a fraction of the fear I felt when I got tested for STDs, because my wife had been sleeping with someone else without my knowledge. I met his eyes. I wanted her to understand that actions have consequences beyond just the ones you intend. Understanding dawned on his face. That's psychological warfare. That's karma. I walked out before he could respond, left him sitting there with his cold coffee and his crumbling future. The satisfaction I'd been waiting for finally arrived. Not a flood, just a trickle, but real. Marcus understood now. Understood that I wasn't going to be passive or forgiving or understanding. Understood that there was a price for what he'd done, and I was going to make sure he paid it. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Jennifer Ward, thank you for your cooperation today. Your information was very helpful. Then 30 seconds later, another text from an unknown number. I opened it expecting more from Marcus, but it was Rachel. They're firing me. I hope you're happy. I hope destroying my career makes you feel better about your own failures. I read it twice, felt each word like a slap, then deleted the message without responding. She wanted a fight, wanted to make me the villain, wanted to turn her consequences into my cruelty. But I was done engaging with her narrative, done defending myself against accusations from someone who'd lost all credibility. I drove home through afternoon traffic, past coffee shops and grocery stores, and all the normal places where normal people lived normal lives. My life didn't feel normal anymore. It felt like performance art, the dissolution of a marriage, an installation piece featuring evidence and accusations and consequences. At home, I found a box on my doorstep. No return address, just my name in Rachel's handwriting. Inside were items I'd left at her parents' house over the years. A jacket, some books, a photo album from our honeymoon. Things she no longer wanted contaminated with my presence. The photo album hurt. I flipped through it. Us at Niagara Falls, laughing in the rain, young and in love, and so stupidly certain about our future. Rachel in a sundress, me with my arm around her waist, both of us looking at the camera like we were showing the world what happiness looked like. That couple didn't exist anymore. Those people were gone, replaced by strangers who'd spent the afternoon trying to hurt each other through lawyers and HR departments and carefully deployed truths. I closed the album, put it in a drawer I wouldn't open again, and sat down at my kitchen table with the divorce papers that needed signing, the financial documents that needed reviewing, the administrative dismantling of a 12-year relationship. My phone rang. My lawyer, Sandra, calling with updates. James, hi. I have news about the divorce proceedings. Go ahead. Rachel's attorney is pushing back on the amended agreement. They're claiming the reimbursement clause for fertility treatments is punitive and not based in legal precedent. It's based on fraud. She lied about trying to conceive while actively preventing conception. I agree, and I think we can argue that successfully. But be prepared. This might go to mediation. Rachel's not going to just accept your terms without a fight. Fine, let her fight, Adonis. I have evidence. I know you do. But evidence cuts both ways, James. She could argue emotional distress, could claim your behavior after discovering the affair was psychologically harmful, could paint you as vindictive. Let her try, Sandra sighed. I'm saying this as your lawyer and your friend. At some point, you need to decide if being right is worth the cost of proving it. Divorce mediation can get ugly and expensive fast. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the question she'd asked. The cost of being right. The price of truth. Yes, I said finally. I'm prepared. Okay, then we'll prepare for mediation. I'll file the motion next week. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and thought about what was coming. More lawyers, more meetings, more careful recitations of betrayal, more documented evidence of gun, more public airing of private pain. Rachel wanted a fight, wanted to make this difficult, wanted to punish me for refusing to quietly accept her narrative. Fine, I could fight. I'd gotten good at it over the past few weeks. My phone buzzed again. David. Heard about the HR meeting. How'd it go? It went. Rachel's probably getting fired. And you feel? I tried to identify the emotion. Satisfaction, guilt, relief. It was all tangled together, impossible to separate. I feel like I did what I had to do, I typed back. Whether that makes me right or just vindictive, I don't know anymore. For what it's worth, I think you were right. She made choices. You're just making sure those choices have consequences. I wanted to believe that, wanted to think I was motivated by justice rather than revenge, by truth rather than cruelty. But sitting alone in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of my dissolving marriage, I wondered if there was really a difference, if pursuing truth with this much determination wasn't just revenge in a prettier package, if I was becoming someone I'd recognize when this was all over. I didn't have answers, just questions and evidence and the slow, grinding work of ending a marriage while trying to preserve my integrity. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the kitchen in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful. Indifferent. The world kept turning, regardless of my pain, regardless of Rachel's consequences, regardless of whether any of this mattered in the long run. I pulled out the final piece of evidence I'd been saving, the thing I hadn't shown anyone yet, not even David, the revelation that would change everything one more time. But not tonight. Tonight I was too tired for more truth-telling, more revelations, more carefully orchestrated justice. Tonight I would just sit in my kitchen and watch the sun set and try to remember who I was before all of this started. Tomorrow I would detonate the last bomb. Tomorrow would be the final reckoning. But tonight I would rest. Thursday morning I woke with the kind of clarity that comes from decisions already made, from crossing a threshold you can't uncross. Today was the day, the final truth, the last piece that would reframe everything that had come before. I'd been holding this back deliberately, strategically, waiting for the moment when it would have maximum impact, when Rachel thought she'd seen all my evidence, heard all my accusations, faced all her consequences. Now was that moment. I sent 3 emails before breakfast. To Rachel's lawyer, scheduling emergency mediation, new evidence has come to light that affects asset division. To my lawyer, Sandra, we need to talk, this morning if possible. It's urgent. To Rachel, we need to meet, today, 2 p.m. at the house. Come alone, this is important. Then I pulled out the folder I'd been keeping locked in my desk drawer for 2 weeks, the one even David hadn't seen, the one containing evidence so explosive it would fundamentally alter the entire divorce. Sandra called at 9. What's this about new evidence? Can you come to my house? I need to show you something in person. James, if this is just more texts or photos, it's not. Trust me, you need to see this. She arrived at 10, briefcase in hand, professional skepticism on her face. I led her to my office, closed the door and handed her the folder. This is a financial forensic report commissioned from a private investigator, I said. It covers Rachel's banking activity for the past 3 years. Sandra opened the folder, started reading, and her expression shifted from skeptical to shocked to something like awe. Holy shit. Keep reading. She flipped through pages, her lawyer brain processing implications faster than she could articulate them. This is, James, do you understand what this means? I understand exactly what it means. Rachel's been hiding assets, significant assets. This offshore account, these transfers, She's been systematically moving money out of your joint accounts into accounts you don't have access to for 3 years. 2 years and 8 months, according to the report. It started small, 100 here, 200 there, but it escalated. The report estimates she's hidden approximately $127,000 from the marital estate. Sandra looked up from the papers, her face pale. Have you confronted her about this? Not yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Understand the legal implications. The legal implications are significant. If she's been hiding assets during divorce proceedings, that's fraud. The court will not look kindly on this. She could lose her claim to any shared property. You could potentially get a much larger share of the marital assets. She flipped to another page. Wait, this offshore account, when was it opened? 4 years ago, before the affair started. So she's been planning an exit strategy for 4 years? Apparently. Sandra sat down heavily in my desk chair. James, this changes everything. The story about the affair, about Marcus, about her being swept up in emotion. It all falls apart when you realize she's been preparing to leave you for years. This is premeditated financial fraud. I know. And you've been sitting on this for how long? I found out 2 weeks ago. The investigator finished his report the day after Rachel signed the initial divorce papers. Why didn't you tell me immediately? Because I needed to think about what I wanted to do with the information. Because once I deployed this, there was no going back. Because I stopped, tried to articulate something I'd been feeling but hadn't named. Because this is the nuclear option, Sandra. This doesn't just end our marriage. This destroys Rachel financially, legally, possibly criminally. And I needed to be absolutely certain I was willing to do that. And are you certain? I thought about the question. About Rachel crying in our dining room. About her losing her job. About the consequences she was already facing. Thought about whether adding this to the pile was justice or just cruelty. Then I thought about the birth-controlled deception. About a year of my life spent trying to conceive a child she was actively preventing. About her planning an exit strategy for 4 years while I was planning our future. Yes, I said, I'm certain. Sandra closed the folder. Then we file an emergency motion to freeze all her accounts pending investigation of asset concealment. We amend the divorce petition to include fraud allegations, and we prepare for this to get very, very ugly. How ugly? Potential criminal charges ugly. Jail time ugly. This isn't just civil court anymore, James. If the DA gets interested in financial fraud during divorce proceedings, Rachel could be facing felony charges. The weight of that settled over me. I'd known this was serious, but hearing it articulated in terms of criminal liability made it real in a new way. I don't want her to go to jail, I said slowly. I want her to face consequences, but not that. Then we offer her a deal. She returns all the hidden assets, accepts an amended divorce agreement heavily weighted in your favor, and we don't pursue criminal charges. She gets to walk away with something instead of nothing. That seems fair. Fair. Sandra laughed without humor. James, none of this is fair. She stole over $100,000 from your marriage while planning to leave you. Fair would be her in handcuffs. What you're proposing is mercy. Maybe. Or maybe it was just exhaustion. The knowledge that pursuing maximum punishment would require more energy, more time, more of my life spent locked in combat with someone I used to love. Set up the meeting with her lawyer, I said. Show them the evidence. Give them 24 hours to respond with a settlement offer. If they don't, we file criminal complaints. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Sandra left with the folder, promising to have Rachel's lawyer served with notice by end of day. I sat in my office and tried to process what I just set in motion. At 1:45, my doorbell rang. Rachel, 15 minutes early, looking nervous. You said this was important, she said when I opened the door. It is, come in. We sat in the living room, not the dining room, scene of too many previous confrontations. She perched on the edge of the couch like a bird ready to fly, and I sat across from her in the armchair that used to be ours and was now just mine. Your lawyer should be calling you any minute, I said, but I wanted you to hear this from me first. Hear what? Before I could answer, her phone rang. She looked at the screen, frowned. It's my lawyer. You should answer. She did. I watched her face cycle through confusion, shock, horror, panic. Watched her understand in real time that I'd found her secret, that the carefully constructed exit plan she'd been building for years had just collapsed. "I'll call you back," she whispered into the phone, then hung up and stared at me with something like terror. "You found the offshore account." I found all of it, the transfers, the hidden savings, the systematic theft of marital assets. 127,000, Rachel. You stole 127,000 from our marriage while pretending we were partners. It's not stealing. That money was mine, from bonuses, and bonuses earned during our marriage are marital property. Moving them into secret accounts is asset concealment, and doing it while we're in divorce proceedings is fraud, criminal fraud. She went white. Criminal? My lawyer is filing an emergency motion as we speak. Unless you agree to settlement terms, this goes to the DA's office tomorrow. You're bluffing. I pulled out a copy of the forensic report, slid it across the coffee table. Read it. She did. I watched the understanding dawn that I wasn't bluffing, that I had documentation, that she was in serious legal trouble. James, please. You have to understand, I was scared. I didn't know what would happen with us, and I needed a safety net, and you planned this for 4 years. 4 years of systematically stealing from me while I thought we were building a life together. I wasn't planning to leave you. I was protecting myself in case something happened. Something like an affair you'd conduct for 6 months before taking a 2-week vacation with your lover. I leaned forward. Don't lie to me anymore, Rachel. The evidence is clear. You've been preparing to leave me for years. The affair with Marcus wasn't an impulsive mistake. It was part of a long-term plan. She was crying now, makeup running, hands shaking. What do you want? What will it take for you to not press charges? Everything. What? Everything you hid, every dollar returned to joint accounts. Plus penalties. I want 70% of our total marital assets, including the house. You get 30% and you walk away. No alimony, no claims on my retirement, no contested property division. I can't agree to that. I'll have nothing. You'll have 127,000 more than you deserve, plus 30% of everything else. That's more mercy than you showed me. She stood up, paced the room like a caged animal. I can't believe you'd do this. After everything we've been through, you'd threaten me with jail time? After everything we've been through? Rachel, you spent 4 years stealing from me. 6 months sleeping with someone else. A year lying about wanting children. You've shown me exactly who you are. I'm just responding accordingly. I loved you, she said desperately. I still love you. This money thing, it was insurance. It didn't mean I wanted to leave. Stop. I stood too, met her eyes. Stop lying. To me, to yourself, to anyone who'll listen. You didn't love me. You can't love someone and systematically steal from them. You can't love someone and sleep with their coworker. You can't love someone and lie about wanting children while preventing conception. Whatever you felt for me, it wasn't love. It was convenience. It was comfort. It was having someone to pay half the mortgage while you built your escape plan. She sank back onto the couch, sobbing. I'm sorry. God, James, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. You meant all of it. Every transfer, every law, every choice. You just didn't mean to get caught. Her phone rang again. Her lawyer, probably with more details about the charges she was facing. She ignored it, let it ring through to voicemail. What do I do? She whispered. You take the settlement. You return the money. You accept 30 and count yourself lucky I'm not pursuing criminal charges. And Marcus? What about him? Does he know about this? About the money? I hadn't even considered that angle. I don't know. Did you tell him? No, I didn't tell anyone. It was my safety net in case I what? Left you? Wasn't that supposed to be my line? You're the one who had the affair, who stole money, who was planning an exit. She looked at me with something like desperation. What if I give everything back? What if I agree to your terms and we try again? We go to counseling, we work through this, we No. James, please. No, Rachel. There's no coming back from this. Not the affair, not the money, not the lies. You killed our marriage. You don't get to resurrect it just because the consequences are scarier than you expected. She sat there crying, and I felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, not even satisfaction. Just emptiness. Just the hollow realization that I was looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to accept the settlement terms, I said. After that, we file criminal complaints and let the courts handle everything. Your choice. I walked to the door, opened it, waited for her to leave. She gathered her purse with shaking hands, walked past me without looking up. James? She paused on the threshold. When did you stop loving me? I thought about the question, about the moment I'd seen that photo from the Bahamas, about reading the texts, about discovering the birth control deception, about finding the hidden accounts. Honestly, I think you stopped being lovable long before I stopped loving you. I just took a while to notice. She flinched like I'd struck her, then walked to her car. I watched her drive away one more time, probably the last time, and I felt the final thread of connection between us snap. Inside, my phone was ringing. Sandra. Her lawyer just called. They want to negotiate. Tell them my terms are non-negotiable. Full return of assets, 70-30 split, or we go criminal. James, they're asking for 48 hours to review. They have 24. This isn't a negotiation, Sandra. This is consequences. Understood. I'll let them know. I hung up and walked through my house. My house now, not ours. Looked at the furniture we'd bought together, the photos we'd taken, the life we'd built. All of it feeling like a museum now. Artifacts of something that used to exist. My phone buzzed. A text from David. You okay? Define okay, I typed back. Fair point. Want company? Not tonight, I need to sit with this. Okay, but I'm here if you need me. I set down the phone and poured myself a drink. Whiskey, neat, the expensive stuff from the back of the cabinet. Sat in my living room as afternoon faded to evening, as shadows lengthened across furniture that suddenly felt temporary. Tomorrow, Rachel would either accept my terms or face criminal charges. Tomorrow, the divorce would either settle quietly or explode into public spectacle. Tomorrow, I would either close this chapter of my life or commit to fighting it for months, maybe years. But tonight I just sat in the ruins of my marriage and tried to figure out who I was now that it was over. The man who'd gotten married at 22 had believed in forever, had believed that love was enough, that commitment mattered, that promises meant something. The man sitting here at 34 knew better, knew that people lied, that vows broke, that the person you married could become a stranger without you even noticing until it was too late. I didn't know which version of myself I preferred, the naive believer or the cynical survivor. Maybe I'd become some third thing, someone who'd been broken and put himself back together into a different shape, someone who'd learned that truth matters more than peace, that consequences matter more than forgiveness, that sometimes the only way through pain is straight through it. My phone buzzed again. Rachel, I'll sign your agreement. Just please don't press charges. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Have your lawyer send the signed documents to Sandra by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Thank you. I didn't respond to that. There was nothing to say. She wasn't thanking me for mercy. She was thanking me for accepting the inevitable, for choosing the path that ended this quickly rather than dragging it through courts and trials and public humiliation. I finished my drink, went upstairs to bed, lay in the darkness, trying to feel something about winning, about getting everything I'd asked for, about Rachel finally facing the full weight of her choices. But I felt nothing, just tired, just ready for this to be over. Tomorrow would bring signed papers and transferred funds and the final dissolution of a 12-year marriage. Tomorrow would bring closure, whatever that meant. Tonight I just lay in bed and listened to the house settle around me, to the absence where Rachel used to be, to the silence of a life being dismantled one piece at a time. And somewhere in that silence, I fell asleep. 3 months later, I woke to sunlight streaming through bedroom windows I'd forgotten to close and reached automatically for someone who wasn't there anymore. The muscle memory of marriage, still twitching, still reaching, still hoping despite everything, that the last 90 days had been a particularly vivid nightmare. But the empty space beside me was real. The divorce papers filed in January were real. The 70-30 asset split was real. Rachel's signature on settlement documents was real. The end of my marriage was as real as the morning sun. I went downstairs, my stairs now, in my house, paid for with my 70% of our assets, and made coffee in a kitchen that still felt too big for one person. Outside, February snow fell soft and silent, covering the driveway where Rachel's suitcase had once rolled, the walkway where she'd stood dripping rain and lies, the street where her car had driven away for the last time. My phone showed 2 text messages. From David, breakfast? I'm buying. From Sandra, final documents are ready for review. Stop by the office when you can. Final documents, the last administrative detail of a dissolved marriage. The period at the end of a sentence that had run on far too long. I texted David, Rosie's Diner, 9 a.m. Then I showered, dressed, and drove through snow-quiet streets to meet my best friend for breakfast and closure. David was already there when I arrived, sitting in a booth by the window, 2 cups of coffee going cold between his hands. He looked up when I slid in across from him, studied my face with the practiced eye of someone who'd been watching me barely hold it together for months. You look better, he said. I look the same. No, you actually look better. Less, he gestured vaguely at my face. Less haunted, less like you're one bad day away from a complete breakdown. Maybe I already had my breakdown and you missed it. Did you? I thought about it, about the nights I'd spent staring at ceiling cracks, the mornings I'd forgotten to eat, the weeks that had blurred together into undifferentiated grief. I don't know, maybe. Or maybe I'm still having it, just very slowly. The waitress came, Rosie herself, 60s and cigarette-voiced and kind. The usual, James? I realized I'd been coming here often enough to have a usual. Yeah, thanks, Rosie. She patted my shoulder, that universal gesture of, I heard about your divorce and I'm sorry, then went to put in my order. Everyone in town knows, I said to David. Small towns are like that. Secrets don't last. He took a sip of coffee. How does it feel, being the wronged husband, the sympathetic victim? Exhausting, but satisfying? I considered the question. Over the past 3 months, I'd become a minor celebrity in our social circle. The man whose wife had betrayed him, who'd responded with calm dignity, who'd emerged from the wreckage with his integrity intact. People bought me drinks, offered sympathy, treated me like I'd survived something heroic. I don't know about satisfying, I said finally. Validating, maybe. Everyone knows the truth now. Everyone knows what Rachel did. But it doesn't. I stopped, tried to articulate something I'd been feeling. It doesn't make me feel better. It just makes me feel confirmed. Like, yes, I was right to be hurt. Yes, she was wrong. But that confirmation doesn't heal anything. It just makes the wound official. David nodded slowly. Have you heard from her since the settlement? Once, she emailed to ask about splitting up the last of our shared possessions. I told her to keep whatever she wanted, that I didn't care anymore. And did you care? No, they're just things, furniture and kitchen appliances and photos from a life that doesn't exist anymore. She can have all of it. My breakfast arrived, pancakes I'd ordered out of habit and wouldn't finish. I pushed them around the plate while David watched with the patience of someone who'd spent 3 months watching me not eat. Sandra said the final documents are ready, I said. The divorce is final? Officially final as of February 1st. I'm technically single again. I tried the word out, felt it sit wrong in my mouth. Single. After 12 years of being half of a couple, I'm just me, unattached, alone. You're not alone. You have friends, family, a whole support network of people who I know, and I'm grateful. But it's not the same as having a person, someone who knows all your stories, who understands your weird habits, who can finish your sentences. I set down my fork. I lost more than a wife, David. I lost my witness. The person who could verify my memories, who could confirm that, yes, That thing happened. Yes, that's what we said. Yes, we really did promise forever. Rachel was a liar and a thief, not much of a witness, but she was my liar and thief. She was the person I'd built 12 years of history with. And now all that history is what? Contaminated? Unreliable? How much of our marriage was real and how much was performance? I don't even know anymore. David reached across the table, gripped my hand. The love you felt was real. Maybe hers wasn't, or maybe it was real and she destroyed it anyway. But your love, your commitment, your effort, that was all real. Don't let her betrayal make you doubt yourself. I wanted to believe that, wanted to think that my half of the marriage had value even if hers didn't. But it was hard to trust my own memories when the person who shared them had rewritten the whole story. What happened with the HR investigation? David asked, changing the subject. They fired both of them, Rachel and Marcus. Timesheet fraud plus ethics violations. It was in the company memo last month. How do you know? You don't work there. Sarah forwarded it to me. She thought I'd want to know. I picked up my pancakes. Marcus moved to Seattle, apparently. Took a job with a tech startup, starting over. Rachel's still here, living with her parents, working temp jobs while she figures out what's next. Have you seen her? Once, at the grocery store. We made eye contact across the produce section, and I watched her decide whether to approach me. She didn't. Just turned around and walked the other way. How did that feel? Like seeing a ghost? Like encountering someone who used to matter, who used to be central to my life, and realizing they're just another person now. A stranger who happens to know where I'm ticklish and how I take my coffee. We sat in silence for a while, David eating his omelet, me not eating my pancakes, both of us watching snow fall outside the window. What comes next? David asked finally. Now that it's officially over, now that you're officially single, what's the plan? I don't know. I've spent 3 months focused on ending things. I haven't thought much about beginning again. Maybe it's time to start thinking about it. Maybe. But the truth was, I didn't know how to begin again. Didn't know how to date after 12 years of marriage. Didn't know how to trust someone new when the person I'd trusted most had betrayed me so completely. Didn't know how to open myself to vulnerability again when vulnerability had cost me so much. There's something I haven't told you, I said suddenly, about the offshore account, about the hidden money. David set down his fork. I thought Rachel returned all of it as part of the settlement. She did, all $127,000, plus penalties. But there was more. More? The forensic investigator found additional accounts, smaller ones, harder to trace. Another $43,000 scattered across various institutions. Money Rachel had been hiding for even longer. Did you confront her about it? No, I documented it, showed it to Sandra, and we decided to let it go. David stared at me. You let her keep $43,000 that she stole from you? I let her keep her escape fund because I realized I stopped trying to articulate something I'd been feeling. I realized that taking everything would make me feel powerful, but it wouldn't make me feel better. And at some point, revenge stops being justice and becomes just cruelty. So I drew a line. She returned the money she hid during our marriage. She accepted the 70-30 split. And I let her keep the accounts I legally could have claimed but morally felt belonged to her fear more than my anger. James, that's incredibly mature. Or incredibly stupid, I'm not sure which. It's both, but mostly it's you choosing to be the person you want to be instead of the person the situation tried to make you. Maybe. Or maybe I was just tired of fighting. Tired of evidence and accusations and carefully deployed truths. Tired of winning battles that left me feeling hollowed out instead of vindicated. We finished breakfast, David eating, me picking, and walked out into February snow that was already turning to slush. He hugged me goodbye in the parking lot, that brief masculine embrace that communicated everything words couldn't. You're going to be okay, he said. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you will be. How do you know? Because you're already okay. You just haven't noticed yet. I drove to Sandra's office, signed the final documents that officially ended my marriage, accepted her congratulations that felt more like condolences. Then I drove home through streets that were starting to look familiar again, through a town that was slowly becoming mine instead of ours. At home, I walked through rooms that I'd finally finished reorganizing. New furniture in the living room, fresh paint in the bedroom, photos on the walls that showed my life before Rachel, my life after Rachel, but nothing from the 12 years in between. It was like our marriage had never happened, like I'd erased it from the record. Except I couldn't erase it from myself, couldn't undo 12 years of growth and change, couldn't unknow the things I'd learned about love and betrayal and trust, couldn't become again the man I'd been at 22, naive and hopeful and certain that promising forever meant something. That man was gone, replaced by this one, harder, clearer, more careful. Someone who'd learned that people lie, that promises break, that forever is just a word people say when they mean for now. So I sat in my living room and looked at the space where Rachel used to be, the couch we'd picked out together, now replaced, the TV we'd watched, now sold, the coffee table where she'd signed divorce papers, now gone. Everything physical was gone, but the shape of her remained. Negative space, the outline of what used to be there, visible only by its absence. My phone buzzed, an email from Rachel, the first communication in weeks. Subject, closure. Body, James, I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you. I know I destroyed what we had, that I hurt you in ways I'm still understanding. But I'm writing because my therapist says closure requires acknowledging harm, and I want to acknowledge what I did to you. I lied about the affair, about wanting children, about the money. I lied so much and for so long that I stopped knowing what was true. I convinced myself that our marriage was unhappy because that made the affair feel justified. I told myself you didn't care because that made my deception easier. I created a narrative where I was the victim of a dead marriage instead of the person who killed it. You were right about everything. The calculated nature of my betrayal, the length of my deception, the way I systematically destroyed what we built while pretending to protect it. You were right that I chose comfort over honesty, that I prioritized my desires over your well-being, that I betrayed you in ways that went far beyond physical infidelity. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to respond to this email or acknowledge it or do anything with it, except maybe feel slightly less like you're crazy for being hurt. Because you're not crazy. You're wounded by someone who promised not to wound you. And that's on me. Completely on me. I'm working on becoming someone different. Someone more honest, more accountable, more aware of how my choices affect others. I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'm trying. I hope you find happiness. Real happiness. With someone who deserves your trust and honors your faith. You're a good man, James. You deserved a better wife than I knew how to be. I'm sorry for all of it, even though sorry doesn't fix anything. Rachel, I read it 3 times, looking for manipulation, for hidden agendas, for some ulterior motive beyond what it claimed to be. But it just seemed honest. Raw. The first truly honest thing Rachel had said to me in years. I sat with the email for a long time, trying to decide how to feel about it. Satisfied that she'd finally admitted everything? Angry that it took divorce for her to be truthful? Sad that this apology came 3 months too late to matter? Finally, I closed the email without responding. Because she was right. Sorry didn't fix anything. It didn't undo the betrayal, didn't restore the trust, didn't erase the year I'd spent trying to conceive a child she was preventing. It was just words, arriving after the fact, offering nothing but the acknowledgement of harm I'd already lived through. Maybe someday I'd respond. Maybe someday I'd accept her apology, forgive the betrayal, find peace with what happened. But not today. Today I just needed to sit in my house, and let myself feel the full weight of an ending. Outside, the snow had stopped. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. Beautiful, indifferent, moving forward regardless of my pain, regardless of Rachel's apologies, regardless of whether any of this had mattered. I stood at the window and watched the sunset, the same sunset I'd watched 3 months ago. When this all began, when Rachel walked in glowing with lies, and I asked her about an illness that didn't exist. So much had changed since then. The marriage ended, the truth revealed, the consequences delivered. But I was still here, still standing, still breathing, still capable of watching a sunset and finding it beautiful despite everything. Maybe David was right. Maybe I was already okay, just hadn't noticed yet. Or maybe I was just good at survival, at putting one foot in front of the other, at breathing in and out, at continuing to exist even when existing felt exhausting. My phone buzzed one more time. A text from my mother. Dinner Sunday? Dad wants to try his new smoker. Normal things. Family dinners and new smokers and parents who loved me, even though my marriage had failed. I texted back, I'll be there. And then, because I couldn't think of anything else to do, because the alternative was sitting alone in the dark with Rachel's apology and my own complicated feelings, I put on my coat and went for a walk. The neighborhood was quiet, snow-muffled, peaceful. I walked past houses where families were eating dinner, where TVs glowed blue in living rooms, where normal people lived normal lives unburdened by betrayal and divorce and carefully documented truths. I walked until my fingers were numb and my face was cold and the sun had fully set, until I couldn't feel anything except the physical sensation of moving through space, of existing in a body that would continue regardless of heartbreak. And somewhere during that walk, I made a decision. I would survive this, not just endure it or get through it, actually survive it, come out the other side changed but intact, scarred but standing. I would let Rachel's apology exist without responding to it, would let her guilt be her burden instead of my obligation to absolve. I would stop checking my phone for messages from her, would stop wondering what she was doing or who she was becoming. I would begin the work of building a new life, not built in reaction to the old one, but constructed deliberately, carefully, with the wisdom earned from watching the previous version burn down. I would be okay, eventually, in ways I couldn't predict or control, but first I would be not okay. I would feel everything, the grief, the anger, the betrayal, the loss. I would stop compartmentalizing and controlling and managing, and I would just feel. I walked home through the dark, let myself into my house, and sat down at my kitchen table. And for the first time in 3 months, I cried, not quiet tears or controlled grief, actual sobbing, the kind that shakes your whole body and sounds embarrassing and doesn't care who hears. I cried for the marriage I'd lost, and the wife I'd loved, and the future I'd imagined. I cried for the man I'd been at 22, hopeful and trusting, and the man I'd become at 34, cynical and careful. I cried for 12 years of history that would never be redeemed, for promises that meant nothing, for the particular loneliness of being single after being half of a couple. I cried until I couldn't cry anymore, until I was empty and exhausted and maybe, finally, ready to start over. And then I went to bed, in my house, in my life, in my future that was terrifying and uncertain and completely, utterly mine. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, I kept breathing. And that, I told myself, was enough. For now, it was enough.